And we should be unmuted and live. So today we are chatting about Army Special Rules and a bit of context to that. There's been a lot of spoilers, but we haven't seen anything in full from any army. So the only thing we have seen for every other army is the army-wide rule. And the way the game is structured is, regardless of what your detachment gives, you can always pick a different detachment, strategies and enhancements, different data sheets that cost different points. But your army special rule is with you forever. And therefore, because we don't trust Games Workshop to have a very good parallel design, we are expecting all these army rules to be roughly equivalent in power, but they're clearly not. So I've gathered some expertise with me to 3 players who are way better at this game than I am. So do you want to introduce yourselves? Pavel, do you want to go first?
Yeah, all right. I'm Bulgarian team captain. We are a very young team, and I am playing Tau, Astra Militarum, against your cult and Tierlist.
Cool, and we've also got Colin with us.
Hey, I played Chaos Knights for Team Ireland and have a couple of tournament wins. But yeah, looking forward to the new edition.
So 2 WTC players, and we got Rafael with us for WTC Brazil.
We can't make it this year in the end, annoyingly. So I'm the loser on the chat. I play pretty much anything Imperial. Apart from Guard, because they suck, but yeah, otherwise.
Raf is the person that got me properly into 40k with some guidance, and he is very good in the local scene, but he also suffers from the... Anytime he turns away from the light of the Emperor with any Xenos or Chaos army, he just fails miserably immediately. So he goes from going 4-1 or 5-0 to... What was the last one? 2-3?
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that? Yeah, Raf doesn't play not Imperium things.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, this is the concept. That's what we're going to do today. We're not going to talk about any data sheets or any real, I guess, strats and things like that, unless they interact directly with the army rule. So before we started this, I asked you guys to tell me which army you think will be the one in the middle, and we had a couple of guesses. They were both all very different, so we had to do a tiebreaker of the tiebreakers. But the middling army, the most middling army, is Tau, is the starting point. And I've just started with that, so we have a point where we begin. Pavel, your vote was for Tau. Do you want to go through their army rule and tell me why it's shocking, why it's average?
It's aggressively average. Basically, here we're discussing only the army rules, so everything can break when the datasheets came. But as of now, Tau army rule gives you +1 to hit if you have 2 units shooting at the same unit and they're within range, which have some debuffs. Basically, giving +1 to hit normally means for Tau going from 4 to 3, which is around 25% DPS in shooting. Shooting DPS is more valuable than close combat DPS because you can split fire, not with this rule, but normally. The other thing is that this is the main idea. You're showing 1 unit that is shooty and 1 cheap unit to mark the target, and you're getting +1 to hit, which is 25% DPS. And if the marking unit have marker like keywords, you're ignoring cover, which is additional DPS. So DPS wise, this is a good buff for roughly 70% of your army, because at least 30% will be chaff without guns like Root Hounds or something, or units that will be granting this rule. Which are the negatives of this and why this is average? First, for whatever reason you cannot split fire. If you split fire, you're getting -1 to hit with a guided unit, which is a huge penalty. You have to expose additional unit every time you want to benefit from this rule, which means that every time you want to get benefits from this, you have to expose more resources on the table. And the third problem with this is that basically don't help you out with anything else, and the only gun that you can split fire with, hopefully, is flamers from Crisis or something else. But apart from that, if you decide to split fire with the main unit, you will be hitting on 5s. So this is the main idea behind this rule, and I personally vote that this is average, because there is way more armies that can get +1 to hit with lesser debuffs or even stronger rules. So that's it for the Tau.
Cool.
A couple of points. There's a couple of things you missed there. It's not +1 to hit. It's improved the ballistic skill characteristic by 1, so it stacks with +1 to hit.
Yeah, if you have such, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And the second thing is the other unit has to be eligible to shoot. So stuff like Crute Hounds don't have guns, so therefore won't be eligible to shoot.
Yeah, not only able to shoot, but within range. So you have to expose a different shooting unit.
But I do agree, it is very average and nothing special. It's nice, but
would you? So that was the other one of my votes for being in the middle as well. Exactly because it's just the most expected rule Tau would possibly have. Very bland, like point to the thing, mark it up. Did you guys think it's significantly lower or higher than the average, or was it did it just happen to not be your vote for this?
Lower.
So it was lower. Okay, Raph, any thoughts?
I think it's a good rule, by the way. I think the entire game, the more you look into the core rules, the more, which I know we're not talking about necessarily, but cover's going to be everywhere. So if you can have your shooting ignoring cover, that is a big deal. But yeah, I mean, around the middle of the pack, it sounds about right. As it was put, most aggressively Tau rule you can imagine, really. And yeah, the weaknesses that were pointed out are all very real. So yeah, that sounds about right. I think I had them 1 or 2 places higher than my average, my median average. But yeah.
The key thing is, I guess we won't have a starting point, right? Because every time everybody makes a tier list, if you don't anchor somewhere, like you have to rejiggle the whole thing. So I guess we're all okay to roughly start with Tau, and we'll see if it gets pushed lower. Then maybe we're overrating them a little bit. An interesting thing with a lot of these rules is quite a bunch of them are effectively hit bonuses, whether it's +1 ballistic skill, +1 to hit, or whatever. So we can maybe go through all of those first, because then we can very easily compare which one's better and worse. And then we'll go through the weirder ones and see what value they add. So with that in mind, shall we consider Astra Militarum?
Let's go with Astra Militarum.
Let's have a look at what Astra Militarum does. So this, you can tell, is such a professional YouTube channel where everything is just basically streaming Google Chrome sheets. So, Astra Militarum has orders, again, as very much as expected. So, you don't need a spotter, you just shout at a guy, but you need a guy that gives orders. Obviously, the one that's going to be used the most, or one of them, is going to be +1 ballistic skill, which is identical. And then you have a bunch of stuff. The movement is very nice. The rest, I think, are fairly narrow, I think, a lot of the time, in terms of use cases.
They cover is okay.
Sorry.
Good. Yeah, go. Sorry.
Okay. First rank fire, second rank fire is usually slightly better than +1 to hit if you're in rapid fire range.
Okay.
And
with last jump, right?
or if you keep something alive in an objective.
Yeah, they're handy. There is flexibility there, right? So this is way more flexible than the Tau, which is nice.
Depending on the target, because if you have mixed a lot of big guns, maybe it's TKM will still be better. For example, in Kazakhstan or Tempesus or whatever. But yeah, you have the flexibility compared to Tau. You don't remove cover, which is not good. And the biggest drawback here is that you need to be 6 inches away from the target, and the orders didn't splash, which means that it will be extremely hard to get these orders properly going, because every no line of sight shooting can kill the guy that gives orders, which means the guy that gives orders have to be in a unit, and this unit have to be in proximity to give orders to other units. Basically, you cannot put it in the open one guy between 2 units and be in range with the orders to 2 units, which is a big penalty. And the other big penalty for this is that if you want to get, let's say, +1 to hit to 5 different units, something that Tau can do, here you need 5 orders. Yes, few of them can be issued 24 inches away, but most of them are 6 inches. And you have to pay points for each guy that is giving the orders. And normally the guys that give the orders don't do anything else in a good manner. So I don't follow this rule highly. Basically, compared to previous editions, is 3 times less orders, 2 times weaker orders, no splash, and you have to pay extra points for the guy that is shouting the orders. And normally this guy won't be able to shout the orders to 2 or 3 units, and it will be very expensive to keep him alive against no one sets, shooting from the opposite side of the table.
I mean, the previous editions don't massively matter, but compared
Yeah.
to other rules, I guess.
I'm just,
Yeah.
it's super unwieldy, and it's expensive because you're putting attacks to every +1 to hit. And the biggest problem with guard, and especially with the infantry, the most expensive infantry troops will be around 100 or 150 points. And the big question is how much points you are willing to give to +1 to hit on a 150 points unit. And the answer is not much. If this is a unit upgrade, for example. That's why I would put them C or D, something like that.
So they're everybody in agreement that they're worse than the Tau, the orders?
I would argue they're better.
Hard.
Go ahead, Ralph.
No, hard to disagree. They're worse than Tau. Now, I should say, I had Tau sort of 3 or 4 places, guard 3 or 4 places above Tau on my list. Just look it up. But at this point, it's hard to divorce the fact that we've seen half the guard data sheets, right? So
let's ignore the data sheets. Just imagine that there is no data sheets.
I know, I'm just saying it's hard to divorce that. But the flexibility is great, right? I mean, and I think you're understanding the points, right? The most expensive guard infantry unit is 100 points, right? So, and if we go by old points, right? So then you're adding like a 40-point character to every turn, make them either move faster. You know, if there is a way, as there normally has been in every edition, to get an equivalent of tank aid take aid into a tank, for example. I think if you apply all these to guard infantry units, then they're rubbish, right? Because guard infantry units are rubbish. But if they can apply to the heavy firepower guard, I think the flexibility is brilliant, right? Even the take cover, suddenly we know that, you know, if suddenly guardsmen have 4-up saves and most of the game has no AP, it's
Yeah, and it's takeover in terrain gives you 3+, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, the biggest problem here is not the flexibility, but that you're buffing a cheap unit. Even if you buff a 200 points tank or 250, you have to be in a proximity to him. And normally the buffer is exposed compared to before. Before you're paying the points for one guy, and you know that for the entire guy, this guy will be giving whatever bonuses. And now you have to pay.
Is the Tau spotter, though, it's worth noting. So he's also kind of out there.
That's what I was going to say. It's the same as the Tau, except that this is more flexible, right? And I know that the Tau spotting unit can shoot, I think, right? Can they? I can't remember.
Yes.
So on the face,
It's also not limited to infantry. You can give these orders to tanks or sentinels.
Well, sure, you will be able to give them to tanks and sentinels.
And suddenly if you're buffing Lehman Russes or sentinels, that's a lot better than buffing infantry and probably worth it.
Again, the only tank that is going above 180 points is Rogodorn, and the Rogodorn is a bit unwieldy. And if you go to Baneblades, they are like a shoebox that you cannot move from the map. So the biggest thing ever that you can buff is Rogodorn. Most probably you will have one of those.
The thing about the tanks is the same as Tau, right? Because they can buff their big suits in the same way.
Yeah, but the difference is that the big suits can easily go above 500 points.
Right. Let's phrase this in a way that I think will help comparing these. If you were a guard player, would you swap your orders for marker rights?
Yes, any day.
God, no.
Because
in a million years. Yeah.
10 guys can give me +1 to hit and ignore cover and shoot, and they're costing roughly as much as the character that is giving that, but he's not shooting. So
The other way around, I guess, if you're Tau, you wouldn't give up your rule to get orders.
I would.
No.
If I was Tau, I would, because the flexibility is so much better.
There's a lot of going back to points to justify things, and I think that you got the points all wrong, right? The guard character is going to be like 40 points, and you don't have to, So like the efficiency is there, unless it comes out and they are close to 100 points per character, then yeah, sure, it's rubbish. But the flexibility, I mean, how do you win games of 40k? You get to places, you survive on places, and you kill people. Right? This just helps with all three of those, depending on the situation you're in.
It's unwieldy. That is what I'm saying. Basically,
So the Markolites, right? Markolites are extremely unwieldy.
the difference here is that anybody can mark up and use as a marker, and here you're spending a character. Just imagine the board, GT terrain, for example. If I have my character with a unit in one big ruin, he's more than 6 inches away from the second unit, so he cannot propagate and give this flexibility to the other house. So normally he's buffing only the units that are with him within this terrain and covered, because you cannot go in the open with 10 guys in this guy. You cannot leave him without a unit, because no one outside shooting will take him. And if you want to stay there and slingshot every turn a unit to get the bonus, this means that you are paying once the character and once more the unit that is guarding him from whatever no one outside is shooting that there is. And at the moment, there is a lot no one outside shooting, because the core rules are giving 3 buffs to the no one outside shooting in this edition. So I not discuss the unit entries, but the core rules are buffing the no one outside shooting in 3 different ways.
I understand your point, but it's like just more applicable to Tau. Right? For every unit you want shooting, you have someone around who's standing around basically not shooting. So if you're just in some hypothetical mirror, you go, okay, so all my spotting units are now dead. And you're just feeding even more units than a couple of characters that are long term, sure, might be hard to hide, but they don't have to expose themselves until you will start running out of assets, right? Like,
it's the dual usage of the units that can give better benefits from the Tau, and the nature of the Tau army is more suitable to take bonuses, because...
well, this is why I'm asking the question in terms of if you just take these rules and swap them around, it's the easiest way to kind of apply it.
Normally Tau will benefit from the orders way more than the guard, because he have bigger units that are 6 times more expensive. So the Tau have making more sense for the orders, because takeover on crisis both sides will be amazing.
So first of all, if those 2 army rules, if the armies would gladly swap and get each other's rule, first of all, they're definitely in the same tier, right? So guard are going to go in tier B together with Tau. I think that's pretty clear. And I think we'll take a quick vote on whether they're ahead or behind, because it's 21 armies, and we don't want to be here for 7 hours.
Yeah, I put them ahead.
So 1 ahead.
Ahead of Tau and B.
1 behind, and Raph, you're the tiebreaker here.
1 ahead of Tau.
Yeah. Alright, cool. Ahead is there. Excellent. Shall we continue with the similar type rules, I think? Because we're kind of on the ball with stuff. So I think Chaos Space Marines are the next kind of bonus to hit sort of thing. So, Chaos Space Marines. Does anyone want to take that one to explain this very short thing? Crickets, right, I'll go for it then. Cool, Chaos Space Marines. Each unit independently decides whether it wants to get effectively +1 to hit, because that's what sustained hits is, unless it's, you know, they have rerolls, so it's technically slightly better, or lethal hits, which I think in most cases you want the sustained hits, because you're going to be targeting something you can kill with your normal shots, but the lethal, having the choice of lethal helps. And then the drawback here is that you take a leadership test at the end, and if you fail it, you take D3 mortals.
It's decent, but the D3 Mortals kind of worries me, because Chaos Space Marines are not an army that tends to have a huge amount of wounds. They tend to be fairly elite. And yeah, it's only if you fail leadership, but...
It's also only if you choose to do this, right? So you don't have to when you're shooting chaff.
True, but then you don't... There's no benefit to the army hero. It is good, and sustained hits and lethal hits are both really good rules to have. I wonder how the sustained hits react with if you already have sustained hits. Do they stack?
So that's been asked a bunch of times because of the datasheet spoilers. And I think currently they stack, but it needs an FAQ. So because the sustained hits rule itself is not a rule, you get Dark Pact plus whatever other rule for sustained hits you have, I think. So you get 2 sources of sustained hits, 1. So it procs Dark Pacts on a 6, and it procs the other rule on a 6 as well, simultaneously.
I don't think it does. Just not to go down that rabbit hole, because Dark Pact specifically gives you a weapon sustained hits one
I
ability.
see. Yeah, fair enough. I don't know, is the honest answer, but I guess it just means that units that have sustained hits, if they don't stack, would just always have lethal and sustain at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, where do you put it?
I would
mean,
put it
Yep.
here. It's effectively the same thing, plus on the hit.
It's the same tier, but I
Yeah.
personally rate it slightly above the other two because it's the easiest ones to access and it's completely independent. So you just have it.
And it also has the option of lethal hits if you ever need it. If
Yeah.
the map says it's just better.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is slightly better than the other two, right?
I would say either bottom A or for sure above Astra Militarum in B. Basically, you don't need additional units and to spend anything in order to activate it. You can activate it on the entire map, and it has some flexibility. It's giving less, basically, compared to Tau, where you're going from 4 to 3 to hit. Here you are going from 3 to 2, which is 20% DPS increase, so the total amount is less, but you don't need additional units to activate it, and you have flexibility, so I would say either top B or bottom A.
If we're all in full agreement that it's better than the other two, I'm gonna put it.
I'm not, by the way.
You're not okay. So what do you think? What do you think is worse?
I haven't rated it, including Titan. I don't remember the rule.
Sorry, you cut off really badly there.
Sorry, my headset moved. I have it in my list as the fourth worst army rule of all of them, including Titans who don't have an army rule. No, and I think all the points made are valid, so I think I'm being too harsh. I'm probably grading it a bit down because I think it's dull.
Okay.
But it's just not that great.
It's not fantastic. So what I was trying to say is if all of us were in agreement that it's better, I would have put it in A for the time being, just so we have a spread. But if there's some doubt, I'm happy to put it in B, but I think it is above the other two.
Just to justify why I think it's worse than the other two,
Yeah.
just for context. And I think the points about points efficiencies and everything that was made are very valid. However, the others all give you something else, right? This is giving you an extra hit 1/6 of the time. Tau, you ignore cover and you get +1 a hit, potentially plus, and guard gives you the flexibility thing here. 1/6 of the time you get an extra shot. Now, and the more I think about tanks and stuff, the more there's value here potentially as well. So I admit that I'm being harsh, but I think personally I'd rather have the other two because they give you something else.
Keep in mind that Tau don't work in close combat, and marker white requires additional points, and yeah.
Sure, but we don't know the points,
We
right?
don't know the points.
But it's harder to do. More than 0 points. Let's say this way.
It is hard to do, but if we use 10 editions, well, I guess they only came out in whatever third edition. 7 editions of 40k, whatever it was, of Tau, their shooting is better than CSM shooting, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
their shooting is more efficient. Is now
Normally,
everyone-
benefits to shooting is better than benefits to close combat. This is something that I started with.
and given that everyone else rates it more than the guard and stuff, I'm fine to go with it. I admit that I was being harsh. I was clearly on a down.
I think the point about it not working for melee for the other two, because the other two is +1 to ballistic skill. This is sustain hits 1, so you get those situations where you go forward, shoot, and charge. And the flexibility is effectively 2 different orders, which is lethal and sustain, which is not 6, but it's still 2. I think I'm not going to put it in a different tier, but I think here realistically is where his spot is. Because if I was guard or Tau, I think I would swap my rule for dark packs in most cases.
In all cases, basically.
Not in all. Not in
Just
all.
imagine
The other ones are just better. But anyway,
Which one?
the other two are just better. Like if you were Tau or guard, you
Okay,
wouldn't-
let's imagine that I'm Tau.
Now,
+1 ballistic skill is the same as sustain hits 1. And if the cheapest possible shooting unit is, let's say, 60 points, this means that every time I want to have +1 to hit, I'll have to sacrifice 60 points. And if I have the Chaos Space Marines rule, every time I want to have +1 to hit, I have 30 or 40% chance to get
The
more
oth-
points,
yes, but
which
the
are
other way
less
of
than
looking
6
at it,
points.
the other way of looking at it is, this is a rule that comes up 1 in 6 times on any given activation. Which I know the maths and maths-driven people say why it's good, but it's just like great.
I mean,
I've rolled many hitting faces where I roll no sixes and it does nothing.
technically so does the other one, right? Because it comes up on threes.
Yeah,
Well, the other
sustained
flexibility,
hit is absolutely the same as +1 to hit. Let's go with
I
this.
think he's talking about the cover, which is a bonus, to be fair.
Yeah,
It's a bonus.
It's huge. It's really big. And also the fact we know from the same article that Tau gets sustained hits as well. So I mean, it's a bit unfair, but
I mean, you know,
anyway,
the Chaos guys might. So,
replacement plan.
all right, so let's go through this. Colin, where would you put this?
Top of B.
Cool. Baba, where would you put this?
Ahead of guard.
And Raph, where would you put this?
I'll go with the consensus. It's fine.
Okay, that's cool. Progress is great. Next, +1 to hit rule. I mean, we're getting all the easy stuff out of the way first. That's what I'm rushing us through. Did Admech had some +1 to hit equivalent thing, right? So let's go with
No, their army rule is different, I think.
Okay, let's go with Bhutan then. Bhutan definitely have something that's kind of similar. I mean, none of them are identical.
Admech have a really bad version of it. Yes.
We'll grab all the easy ones first, because then we're going to get into like the orcs wying once a game and stuff, which gets complicated. So, I have the ancestors. I'm the traditional dwarf player here. So, if your army, blah blah blah, each time basically enemy unit kills a unit, they get a judgment token. Up to 2. If they have 1, you reroll to hit. Add 1 to hit. Sorry, not rerolls. And if they have 2, you also add +1 to wound.
I would say C or D.
So this is, for me, noticeably worse than the rest, because to trigger it, you have to lose a unit.
Or lose 2 units. I would agree. C or D.
Yeah, this is definitely worse.
I have this ranked only above Titans because Titans don't have a rule.
Okay.
Which is the worst.
Wow. All right. I mean, I didn't expect any of these that group of rules to go in D, but you know what? We'll do a little spread, and then they might get upgraded later. Cool. That was quick. Let's see what Admech does now that I've mentioned them so many times. Where I wish these were in alphabetical order, but no. Admech. Somebody else read this. Raph, you're the Imperial expert. Explain what this does.
Well, put very simply, you basically choose beginning of every turn whether to make your weapons heavy.
+1 to hit. +1 to hit if you stay still.
+1 to hit if you stay still, or assault so you can advance and shoot. There's also an AP characteristic qualifier that's deployment zone focused. But so yeah, if you're heavy and you get +1 AP if you're in your own deployment zone, and your assault, and you get +1 AP if you're shooting at something in their deployment zone.
Right.
It is also, it's within, not wholly within, so you can do weird stringing things to get the AP reduction.
Okay, that's kind of better than I thought.
On the other hand, it is start of the battle round, so if you're going second,
that's pants.
your opponent gets to
see what
have
you're
a
going to do. Yeah, that's that one little detail, to be honest, is going from this is nice to no.
It's good in shoot-offs, basically. If you're against another shooting army,
I mean, any rule that makes you stand still is bad times competitively, I would say.
Yeah, but here you have some flexibility. Maybe C. It's better than the Voton in Vacuum.
Yes,
it's
better than the Voton.
Voton is super upgraded if you have abilities to give tokens and army rule, but in Vacuum that we are looking now, but like just vanilla army rules, I would say C. Because it's notably worse than Chaos Space Marines, Guard, and Tau.
Yeah, we're looking at the vanilla because of this concept we went over.
Yeah. I'm
these
just
rules
reminding
always stuck
the audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying to think of a positive. I agree completely with what you just said.
I mean, the positive is it does stuff.
Trying to think of a positive is the AP thing is big, right? With the
very big, yeah.
The anemic nature of AP that, as far as we know it at the moment, anything that does increase AP is a value, right? But I worry about encouraging people to stand still. But.
So the first one is really good in a way that you can control where your units are, but you have to stand still for the bonus. which is terrible. And then the second one is really good in the bonus it gives, but your opponent gets to control if they get shot out in the open in their deployment zone.
It's kind of good in a way because you can say, fuck the enemy, no one outside shooting. The first time I'm a protector imperative, and which means that, as you
Minus
clearly
one.
stated, there is a lot of low AP around, and you're saying now it's even worse.
Worth noting that there's a lot of 0 AP where this does nothing, so that's a
Yeah,
bit sad.
true. But the thing is that the first one is good if you're just for the second bullet point. Basically, you're
Yeah.
saying, okay, my army is more tough
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I'm in a defensive position, and if I'm happens to be able to shoot without moving, yeah, this is fine. But apart from that, it's good as a protective mechanism against no one side shooting or shooting with angles, for example, something towering or a aircraft or whatever. And the second one is the one that most probably will be better if you want to engage, and especially this can be even more playable in shoot-offs where the lines are more stationary.
I mean, I think it's noticeably worse than everything in B, right? Because it's so
Yeah,
much
so
less
it's easy
flexible.
I
in my
agree.
opinion.
I put it in C.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh,
We're
good.
getting a nice spread here. Good. Cool. Next army that gets +1 to hit is a special or something similar. We're running out of easy things now. Are we out? Are we done with them?
I think so. Or we can go with Space Marines.
Yeah, let's get them to the reroll side of things, which at least is hitting. So, good old Space Marines. I'm going to open it just for the sake of it, but I think everybody knows the Space Marines get to pick a unit, roll to hit and to wound against it. That's not it. Because Oath got spoiled earlier. Never mind, we know what Oath does. So, Space Marines, pick a unit, fuck it up. Let's start with the resident Imperial player.
Well, it's obviously good, right? I don't think it's as good as some things, but and I think it is very meta dependent. But there's no way it's not A at least, right? It's better than the others,
Okay.
probably, depending on as the meta goes completely weird.
Okay, cool.
I would say let's put it in S and then downgrade it when the real big guns come,
So,
or higher in A.
I've had quite a few chats with Raph that are kind of math-based about where rerolls to hit and wound end up compared to +1 to hit. And I think it's 3 or 4 times better. So if you have multiple combats, this obviously drops off rapidly. However, generally speaking, there's one really big threat where you want to hit things, which I think makes it better, right?
It's,
I would also add with. Sorry, go ahead.
Come again,
It's
sorry.
Yeah, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I was going to say with the increase in toughness in big things, I think there's a lot of times this edition is going to be like a big knight or a land raider or a big brick of terminators that needs to die,
Okay.
and this rule is going to be very good at punishing that.
Yeah,
Well,
on top of that, it can proc little hits, 10 hits, or whatever extra
Sure,
goodies that you can have.
devastating wounds as well. Procs off.
And it's map wide without spending resources to activate it. Basically, it's whatever you like and need it.
the one thing I'll say just for posterity, and the reason I don't rate it that much, is that if the meta isn't what Colin just said, it's really bad, right? If it's just MSU everywhere.
I agree.
Like,
If
like,
it's too
like-
garbage,
If I in my head running in an event I'm going to in 2 weeks, won't have a big target because everyone running Space Marines goes, okay, I'll kill it. At which point you're like, okay, against a 5-man unit or something, I'm going to reroll hits and wounds. I mean, that's fine, right? It's not exactly bad to have, but it's,
I'm inclined to agree with Raph. So rather than put it in S and downgrade it, I'd rather put it in A. Because,
I think it will end up in top of A.
Yeah, because I think the higher up you go in skill level in tabletop games, the more MSU lists get. So I think Space Marines in S if the gap feels weird, we might upgrade it later, but I think at the moment it belongs in A for the time being.
I think the breaking point is there is 2 breaking points here. one, the meta. For example, if you have big targets, great. If it's heavy MSU, bad.
Yeah.
But the other two things that are important are if the Space Marine have any no line of sight shooting, this will be gold with the no line of sight shooting unit. And the other thing, and most probably they will have, and the other thing that this will be gold with is if in the meta there is at least something that is roughly around 200 points. If you get full reroll to wound against something that is 200 points, this means that you can up trade significant trade that is 10% of the opponent's army. And with all the buffs on the tanks, etc., I expect to see at least, for example, Lemurus type of thing here and there.
And our 5 Terminators with a character will be way over 200 points as well, so that's...
Yeah, it's easy to go close to 200 points.
I think that makes perfect sense. I think the worry from a Marine player is that it's the sort of rule that they'll cost into the data sheets, so everything will become more expensive because they get that. Maybe not, because he doesn't know how to point things.
Yeah.
But we're talking only about the rules. For example, the Storm Surge for Tau can be broken. If they mess up the points and he's towering, you're taking 3 and destroying the opponent army.
I think the context here is that if we don't trust Games Workshop to do very good asymmetric design, and that they can consider all army rules to be like roughly equivalent, if you swap the Space Marine rule with the Chaos rule, I think that's a downgrade for the Marines, right? So
for
sure.
Yeah.
I think the on the whole reroll vibe is a good segue into Drukhari. Let's look at some Drukhari. Yeah, let's look at some Drukhari. Colin, you're the talking elf. Take us through this.
Yeah. So, Power from Pain. You basically get pain tokens. You get 3 pain tokens for Strike Force. The detachment rule will also give you up to 3. I know it's
let's
not
ignore that.
but it is more pain tokens.
You get your 3.
And then you get a pain token each time you kill an enemy unit, or each time the enemy unit fails a battle shock test.
Okay.
We haven't seen it yet. I think it's fair to assume Drukhari will have some way to mess with battle shock.
Fair.
And then empowered through pain, so you can spend those pain tokens to either reroll a charge, reroll an advance, or give a unit full rerolls to hit in the shooting or fight phase.
Right. So in terms of advances and charges, pain tokens are basically an inferior command point, which is still very good. But then for shooting and fighting, there are chapter mastery rolls, which is on tap whenever. And
you can crack them on however many units you want.
Yeah.
So if you have 4 combats, you crack 4 pain tokens, all 4 units get full rerolls.
Okay. So really, the only this is clearly better than +1 to hit, even if it's throughout your army like Chaos Space Marines, right? Never mind the Mortals.
There is actually one downside though.
Yeah.
Chaos Space Marines, or Space Marines, you pick a unit and you get out.
Yeah.
Every turn.
Oh yeah, of course.
But if you mismanage your pain units, you don't get that sort of cascading killing units every turn. You can run out of pain tokens and have nothing.
So I was comparing it to the Chaos Space Marines because it's at the top of B for the other unit. I'm just trying to make sure we're all on the same page that this is kind of clearly A tier, right? Or is there any position?
I would argue for West tier or top. For me, this rule is way better than the Space Marine because it's not meta dependent. If the opponent is playing big things, you have full reroll on your big things. If the opponent is playing MSU, you'll get infinite pain tokens.
Actually, counterpoint, it is meta dependent because if they're playing a few big units, you're not getting pain tokens back.
Yeah, but we all know that if you go to higher level tables, everybody needs at least some chaff to go on the objectives and run around. Unless we end up with the 47 Terminator meta.
Yeah, the 5 Terminator units, and you're like, no pain. Nobody feels pain in this army.
Yeah, but the thing is that you have the full roll to hit on multiple units, in multiple targets on the entire map. You can get more points by killing things, and normally with full reroll, you will be able to kill something and regain the token. Hopefully, your opponent will have few chaff units to hold objectives, etc., which means more pain tokens. Battle shock is every turn, so this is a case in which it matters because you're getting more point tokens. So I think that this is better than the Space Marines because it's way more flexible. You can use it in multiple units. It can support MSU things, so I really like it.
Agree with every single thing you just said. I think just to add to the brilliance of this is the context of it being a Drukhari army. So that they make such amazing efficiency out of this. The way that vehicles work now, their vehicles, with the firing decks, they can get decent guns on their vehicles, plus a whole bunch of people with guns on side. For the early shooting phase, it's sort of a nice efficiency thing. And even I know it's the inferior CP thing. Even that is big, right? If CP is as rare as they say they are, right? The fact that you can be like, okay, I don't have to spend a CP if I have an amazing strat that I want to use. I can just use one of these things. The more I think about it, the more I like it.
Cool. I mean, I agree with everything, and even that comment about inferior CP is still a bonus, right? Because you don't have to use it for that. You just can if you have an excess of pain tokens.
Yeah. And you're deciding where to use them. Normally, when you make a charge, you're training, so you're getting CP back. If you cannot trade, you're dead anyway. If you cannot, with 3 units with full row, cannot kill a big unit.
So the only question is this really our first S tier, or is this still in Space Marine tier in the top of A?
In my opinion, this is the first S tier, but
Cool.
I'll
take a majority vote. Colin?
S for the moment.
Was that S? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, S for the moment.
Okay.
We can go to
Well, Raf, you can give your opinion, but it won't matter. So up to you.
Thank you, but love it.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Are there any more +1 to hitty kind of rules? I think Imperial Knights kind of belong in this category.
Yes.
Yeah, let's go for Imperials. Then it's a nice segue out of this into Chaos Knights and starting the weirder shit in this game.
These lethal plus and thing as well. But anyway.
Who was that, sorry?
And Custodes one of these as well. But anyway.
Yes, they are, yeah. In fact, you're right. Let's grab Custodes first. Because then doing the 2 knights back to back, I think, makes a lot of sense. So Custodes, Imperial Man, take it away.
Right, so they keep their dance moves, and very simply, you can give yourself -1 to hit, sustained hits, and lethal strike, I want to say, in combat.
Yeah. So compared to Chaos, basically, pluses is this is no drawback and very flexible, because you pick every fight. So 10 times per game. And then drawbacks is it doesn't affect shooting in any way, shape, or form. So, thoughts?
It's good. If we've got to make some guesswork for how effective it will be, right? If EW's right, and there are fewer rerolls in the game, insert laughing emoji. The -1 to hit, for example, is great, right? If that isn't the case, it's significantly less value. Normally, Custodes are low model, relatively, and therefore everyone has to make the most use out of being in combat when it is. So it seems to feed in nicely into what they are, if you envisage them as a combat army. So I don't think it's exciting, and it's probably, taking what was said about CSM in, it's probably worse than that. But I think it's around that tier probably.
Yeah, for me as well, it 100% has to go into tier B with the other guys that do similar things, because it is like a trade-off of being. It's the best version of that, but it only works in melee, and that does seem to be a noticeable drawback.
Yeah, melee buffs are always worse than shooting buffs, because you get to shoot for 5 turns, you almost never get to combat for 5 turns.
So is that bottom of B for us, I guess? By that logic?
The only saving grace for this is that you don't pay points and it's map-wide to activate it.
The saving grace is also that it's every fight phase, right? So you make 10 separate decisions, which I think is a very big deal.
This is amazing because in one place you can say, hey, I want to be more tough, in the other I want to do this tank, etc.
Let's put it.
Which is amazing. And the other thing is that compared to Tau and Guard, yes, it close combats, but on the other hand, you're not paying extra points to activate it. Basically, you don't need support
Yeah,
units to help
the,
out.
the accessibility is nice.
You don't pay the tax to have the rule.
Okay, so I think we're gonna take a quick vote on whether it's better or worse than the two shooty armies, and then move along because it's quite in. I wish I could make them tied effectively. So Pavel, better or worse than the shooty armies?
In my opinion, better than Astromitaron, worse than Tau. But yeah, here I disagree with
That's
the others.
fair.
But
That's fair. Raf?
That's probably worse than the shooting, but I have to put it for them. Like, because Collins, you shoot all the time.
Okay.
You fire occasionally.
I think that broke mostly, but I just about made worse than the shooting armies, which is sufficient. Colin?
Again, I would say exactly equal. Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between them.
I'll be tempted to put it there, but I really don't want to split those two because they were so tight for us. So I'm gonna put it just underneath, and we'll do the Custodes dirty just to piss off all the Custodes players, I guess. Cool.
Fine.
Knights. I'll take Knights because you just spoke, I guess, just to spread things out a bit. Knights basically get 2 oaths to make, and then if they complete the stretching mission, so they get a basic benefit at all times, and if they complete the little mission, they also get 3 CP when they do it. The mission is either kill the enemy warlord or control at the beginning of your phase, I believe. Yeah, that's right. Control one of the opponent's the opponent's home objective. They're both very difficult to achieve. So I think that realistically the 3 CP thing is just a very small bonus, and what you're looking at is the oath buff. What was that, sorry?
They're not that hard to achieve. The killing the warlord is not that hard to achieve.
Okay.
With the towering rules, we now
It
know
depends on the warlord. If the warlord is
Yeah.
Arceer sitting on the wall for the game, it's gonna hurt.
And if you're playing on like WTC terrain where there's a lot of no windowed walls to hide behind, then yeah, it's a nightmare, right? If you play on UKTC where most of the board can be seen, unless your warlord sits in a particular one place, pretty much, you're in trouble. It is, you still have to jump hoops, and the opponent can counter it, right? So it's not. And I'm not saying you can rely on this at all.
I would say that this army dependent and map dependent, and the benefit from the CP basically from completion, but the basic ability is kind of solid.
Yeah, I mean the deed
Fair.
is the cherry on top, right? Because the reason I put this in this batch is because the oath ability, the first one, which is rerolls ones to hit and wound, is mathematically kind of equivalent to +1. Well, it's better than +1 to hit, I think, at this point. I can't actually math this out in my head. It's probably about equivalent to +1 to hit considering their weaponry.
It's better, in my opinion, it's the best in B because you don't need to pay additional points or units to go through hoops in order to activate it.
It just happens, and then if you happen to kill a warlord, you also get 3 CP, which is definitely...
And sometimes you can get the bonus to move and charge if you need it. So
Yeah,
you have some flexibility, and you have similar DPS that is map wide with a chance to get additional points, additional CP. So I would say best in B.
I would say so as well. Any objections and counterpoints?
Yeah, best in B is fine.
Cool. B is the average. Look, so far, Workshop are doing a very good normal distribution out of the whole thing. So, sucks if you're dwarfs, but dwarfs always suck, unfortunately. So, good segue. Sorry,
Maybe they're the tough ones. We will save them up, or their data sheet.
I mean, yeah. Let's put our faith in asymmetric design, shall we? Right, this is a good segue out of these into the Chaos Knights. So, Colin, you play this. You explain what they do. There they are on the screen.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the Chaos Knight rule is not great. So Despair is -1 to leadership for battle shock tests from round 1 on if you're within 12 of the Chaos Knight. Is this battle shock or leadership test? Have we seen any leadership test stuff?
Yes, the Chaos Space Marines will hurt themselves more often.
Okay, cool.
Fine.
And then Doom of Darkness, battle round 3 onwards. If the target is battle shocked, the Chaos Knight gets +1 to wound, and if they're attacking a Chaos Knight, they get -1 to hit if they're battle shocked. So basically, you kill battle shocked units faster and
he
take
dies.
less damage.
Right, but there's nothing intrinsically in this rule that forces more battle shock test, is there? I'm not missing anything.
No, that's the detachment rule.
This is absolutely garbage, in my opinion.
On its own, yes, I would agree.
On its own, it's D. Bottom D, basically,
I think it's worse than bottom.
for sure. Wotan is doing something on its own. This one
yeah.
is saying, if I shoot something and I don't kill it, next time something happens eventually. If you don't spend the CP, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even basically, I have to kill something, be close to it,
Yeah.
and
this
next
is-
turn,
this
if
is
the
so
opponent
bad.
don't spend the CP, I will have some benefits.
I thought
like
I heard
whatever.
I heard Raph stir with a counterpoint, but
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think it's a lot better than you guys seem to think. I think a lot of I'm making some assumptions here on game design from what's been said. That I expect that most units won't die when they're just shot at, right? I don't think it's going to be 9th Ed. You shoot something, it's dead. I think there's going to be a lot of units that get hit, and then they start taking battle shock. There is potential here. I think on the face of it, I think it's decent but not great. I think it's potential with 1 or 2 things extra in that book, and it becomes very good, right? If they've got another way of putting a -1 battle shock somehow onto something. -2 and units are just fading left and right.
Well, you don't actually want to stack minuses to battle shock. You want to force battle shocks, right? Because if you just put a minus,
Yeah.
they're at -10 and they just pay the CP.
That would be
and they're
ideal.
like, don't worry about it.
No, but if you fail, 5,
Sure,
it's a thing.
sure.
I understand straight line power is not there, but my hesitance is slightly based off, for example, the 9th Ed Chaos Knight Codex, where the rules just became better the better people got with them. And I think there's potential to really screw people over here, so there's a real value in that. I'd rather have that than anything Votan have. But I understand the points made about straight line power. It's just not obviously there.
It is worth noting with Votan and exactly the context you're describing. If somebody's rolling at you with a unit that's not dying, you are feeding it chaff, and it is getting judgment tokens on it, if nothing else. So Votan in the Terminator meta is kind of useful.
No, I completely agree with Raf here, but because both Wotan and Chaos Knights have a lot of potential, and I guess we can make another tier list when we have more rules. Because at the moment, yes, if you have Warlord trait or something that says battle shots left and right, it will be amazing. Same goes for the Wotan. If you have a chip unit or a character that says I see you, judgment token, it will jump straight above the older shooty armies.
Let me put it the other way. If you were Votan, would you swap your judgment tokens for this?
Depends on the other rules. Basically, as of now, just as a blank rule, Votan is stronger. If we are starting to speculate what other things there will be in the book, I don't know, to be honest.
Well, we can't speculate because we haven't seen it. Plus, those other things will cost.
Yeah, the vanilla rule for the Votan is way better because it's saying, hey, this unit, fuck it, and...
I guess my question is pointed at Raph. Like, would you swap the Votan judgment tokens for this rule and go cause despair with, like, the big truck things? Fortresses.
That's a good...
Oh.
He died.
He got disconnected, yeah. I think he just about said that's a good question and dropped out.
I would have it better than Votan because it works without you having to lose units.
Oh, he's back. There he is. So you started to answer the question. I'm curious about the answer.
In a complete vacuum, which is what we're trying. I guess you have to go with a straight line power because the other thing is, let's go Clover. Yeah.
Goodbye, Knights. Welcome to being the worst army in the game. Cool. And since we're on Chaos and talking about the worst army in the game, good segue into Death Guard, I think. Right? Right. This is obviously, this little jab was based on all the speculations and things. Does anybody want to explain about fart range? Or should I take it? But we haven't spoken for a bit.
Pass.
Alright, I'll talk about farts. If you are Death Guard, there is a -1 toughness aura in a range around your unit. That is it. The range is 9 inches after battle round 3. It's effectively meaningless in battle rounds 1 and 2, right? Because it's battle rounds 1 and 2, and it's short. So,
Yeah, well, it's battle rounds 1 and 2, and you're Death Guard.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, as soon as the game actually starts getting played, as far as you're concerned, you have a 9-inch range of -1 toughness. Which does not equate to +1 to wound, which means that this is worse than +1 to hit, which means that not only is it worse than +1 to hit, it's also in a short range. This is definitely COD tier, so we just have to make a call.
I don't agree.
You don't agree? Oh,
You know?
okay. Okay.
I think it's better. I think it's better than all the +1 to hit ones. The against most targets in the game, it is +1 to wound, which is like the most incredible rule to have in 40k, right? Like most targets are toughness 4 or 5.
4 or 5,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, you're a strength 4 army, right? This is +1 to wound most of the time. So I mean, when I say +1 to better than +1 to hit, that's my combat bias coming in. It may well not be, right? But I think it is. I think if we take away from the fact that we all instinctively don't rate Death Guard because they're slow and ponderous and rubbish, the rule itself, it just makes all your combat so much better, right? And shooting, in theory.
I'm not following the bit where +1 to wound is better than +1 to hit, I guess.
Oh, it's because the wounding is harder, right? Everything hits on 3s.
Right, but
You're winning on 5.
But I see. Where it really procs though is against really big tough models, which this will not give you +1 to wound.
No. Against everything, Raf is completely right here. Basically, the match on the hit, but normally you're getting way more rolls to hit, and you're starting, the baseline for hitting is 3 or 4, and for wounding is 4 or up. For example, if you're hitting Terminators, it will be 5s, and it becomes 4s.
Right,
and
so going as a percentage that the wound bonus is better. Okay.
Yeah, if you're going from 5 to 4, it's a bigger percentage increase than going from 3 to 2, for example.
See.
So yeah, on its own, it's better. In vacuum, it's better than the shooting bonuses.
It is also worth saying it is absolutely useless against a whole bunch of targets, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's also only range 9, which is absolutely a big deal.
You can manage that. There's ways for it.
In my opinion, it's for sure better than the Custodes, because you're saying, hey, I'm giving bonuses for my
Sure,
shooting.
yeah, because they're only in combat, so their range is 1. So this is range
Yeah.
9, so that's 9 times more range. Amazing.
Yes, and it's better buffing
It's
close
even more,
combat.
because it's
It's an
actually
impact on the phone
an area.
because you can.
It's 81 times bigger, right?
Yeah,
Well,
and the other
it's
thing
even
is
more
that,
than that because you just throw a rhino up next to the thing you want to shoot, right, and then it has it, right. So it's not only affecting the thing in your own bubble. You can have something else in the bubble, and then everything shoot that thing, for example. So yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. Basically, you're getting on one hand bonuses to shooting, and on the other hand, you're getting better close combat bonuses than the Custodes, because -1 toughness in close combat is better than sustained hits in close combat, for example. So I would rate it definitely above Custodes, maybe above the other shooting armies, maybe behind Knights.
I'll accept that I'm the worst player here, so I'm gonna let you guys vote on this.
Good ones.
But you're breaking up again, I'm sorry.
Bloody internet. That's what problem. I just wondered. I know Colin didn't sound like he liked it to begin with, so I was just wondering if he had any thoughts. But
No, I still think it's worse than Knights. It just doesn't have enough effect in the game. And I know you said T4-5 is the most common. I'm not sure it is anymore. I think this is going to be a very vehicle-heavy meta. And yeah, sure, it used to be going from T8 to T7 was +1 to wound. But going from T12 to T11, it does nothing for most of your Death Guard weapons.
So
Does
Pablo
depend on the matchup.
would put it here.
No, I'm saying that definitely above Custodes, but I'm considering maybe behind Knights, but I'm not sure for that. I'm sure that it's better than Custodes and maybe better than Tau and Guard and Space Marines. Maybe somewhere there.
I think being the Space Marines, the fact they can pick up lethal hits at will, I think out.
Maybe either behind Space Marines or above Custodes, one of the two. I'm not sure
Okay,
if
so
it's better than Guard and Tau.
This is
I'm
the
not
kind
sure
of
about
weird little equivalent range we had going on. So I don't think it's worth spending too much time on this. Is anybody got massive opposition to
I
it being
would
here?
have it down a tier, but
Down
if
a tier?
everybody else disagrees,
I would be keen to have it down a tier as well, personally, but my vote counts for less, I think, in this, in terms of.
I think I'm fine
characters.
that going down a tier if Custodes also go down behind it, because I completely agree
Okay,
with
okay, let's do a bit of cleanup then. That makes sense because that does that look better? That looks
maybe.
visually better.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. These guys have useful buffs at range and melee. Well,
Not melee.
Not melee. These guys have useful buffs just in short range. These guys just don't have useful buffs, and this is awesome buffs. Cool. All right. We started on Chaos. Let's keep it going. Let's go also for some World Eaters. Right. Who wants to read some World Eaters out? Because I explained the farce just now. So, Rob, Blessings of Corn. Colin, I volunteer you for angry things.
So Thorn is the slot machine where you roll 8 dice at the start of each battle round, and it depends on if you get doubles, triples, or Pacific doubles or Pacific triples.
Okay.
Is what bonuses you can get.
So let's quickly go over the very basic math. Is you roll 8 dice. So the worst thing you can possibly get.
2 doubles or 1 triple.
Yeah, 1 triple is the worst thing you can get, or 2 doubles is the most common thing, generally speaking. So if you get 1 triple, any triple is total carnage, is fight on death on a 4-up, or lethal hits. Yeah, total carnage or lethal hits, or you can treat it as a double, obviously, and get +2 movement. So at a very basic level, if you don't want to treat this as reliable, your army has +2 move at all times, and most likely feel no pain 6-up most of the time. And then the other stuff in here, you can get lethal hits, which is cute. Fight on death, which is cute, but opponent can see it, obviously. This is the beginning of a battle round, right? Yes. And the big one is that you can charge charge after you advance. So the opponent has to mind that you could roll that and wreck their shit, even if you never use it. Have I missed anything in the explanations?
No.
No. The last thing that you said is very important, basically. No, everybody has to play assuming that they have advance and charge, even if they don't. Because they can literally spit on your face.
Yeah. This is pretty amazing, right? This is better than +1 to hit. Because it's +2
Yeah,
movement.
worst case scenario, you have +2 movement and feel pain. And you have the psychological warfare that the enemy have to be extra careful for your reach.
There is a very unlucky string of events in which you only have one of those 2 things, but it's pretty unlikely.
Even if you don't have it the entire game, I have to place.
I mean,
Like
you can roll 1 triple, like you can roll Yahtzee and then 2 of 1 more dice, and then you might not get 2 buffs. Basically, it's very unlikely and it's quite sad.
Yeah, one of the turns, most probably you have Yahtzee, but apart from that, even in that turn, the opponent will have to screen and be away from you because he's afraid of the advance in charge.
Absolutely. So, S or A or B, right? Because it's not gonna...
I would say A after the Marines because it's weaker than the Marine rule, which is straight out. Remove this unit, please. But I'm eager to see what the others think about it.
Raph, before you disconnect, I guess.
Now I'm now in the exciting part of my house that has good internet connection, hopefully.
Amazing.
I was just double checking because it's been a while since I read this one. It does apply to your entire army, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And a bunch of people did a whole bunch of maths, and it's, what is it, something like 60-odd% you get advance in charge any given time?
Correct. Yeah, about 60, 70.
They did it a little bit with I think with the other data sheets in mind. So obviously there'll be ways to modify this. But for the purpose of the rule itself, let's treat it that you just you have random access to it on luck.
I think it's brilliant, right? I guess we can argue where in the top, couple of tiers it goes. But I'd be happy that give my army +2 move, and I'm excited, right? That's not before we start getting to everything else. There's a meta question about Marines. I think this, giving a combat army +2 move. There's a scenario here where you get +2 move and advance and charge, right?
Yeah, it's a fairly common one.
And if it is a hard-hitting combat army, that is game-winningly good. But on the flip side, when it comes to single unit destruction, it's hard to argue with the Marines. I don't know exactly what side of that coin it goes, but I think it's up there. A plus, definitely.
Depends on the meta, yeah. If the meta is same as you like, the Marines will go behind this for sure.
Colin, have you got any thoughts before I
Uh,
mine in the bin?
I would agree A tier seems reasonable. Whether it's better or worse than Marines is up in the air.
Okay. I was actually going to make a play for S, bottom of S with this. I just really rate +2 movement. Possibly
So good. And especially if the army's decently fast already, right? If it takes 9 acknowledging.
Exactly, because +2 movement and reroll charge is getting close to reroll charges, which is where the Drukhari are at. Obviously, it doesn't have reroll hits, but you don't have a resource. You just have this constantly, and you do have the Feel No Pain. I will relent to having an A. I think S is a stretch, but it's definitely better than Marines at this point, I think.
I agree. When I think more about it, I agree, because the threat of advancing charge and +2 movement is terrible.
And it's also once you contact combat, right? You drop all these things, and then you just pick up any or stack a bunch of combat buffs. Sustain hits and lethal hits at the same time, for example, or fight on death, and just they're very good. Cool. Thousand Suns, I guess, next. The last remaining god army before Tzeentch makes, not Tzeentch, Slaanesh makes a showing. I'm assuming this edition will see Emperor's Children with their own army at some point.
I believe that was actually confirmed by GW a while back.
Oh, cool. It feels weird to be missing one of them, right? It's kind of unpleasant. Cool. Right, so...
being a bunch of perverts, really. So, yeah.
Sorry, Colin. I interrupted you halfway through the blood thing, so why don't you explain the cabal of nonsense?
Oh God, really? Okay.
So you punish him. I love it. Yeah.
Cabal points. Similar to how they have now, you get a certain amount of cabal points depending on how many sorcerers you have in your army.
Yep.
And then that depends then on basically they can be used on certain rituals. These aren't psychic phase things now; they're just generic ritual things that have varying effects depending on what you want. Like they're ranging from like some extra mortals to the slightly more insane ones of, no armor saves allowed for a unit, which is insane.
So in terms of how the way the rule works mechanically, it's actually quite similar conceptually to the guard orders, except instead of everybody giving one order directly, you just put things in a pool, and then you spend the pool, and it's for nerds who like bookkeeping for no reason.
And you don't spend additional extra points for characters to give it. And
well, you probably do, right? Because they're cabal points, right?
Closer to it's like the World Eaters, right? You get a bunch of points and you spend them in different ways.
Yeah, I think it's A.
I would say, mechanically I'd say it's closer to God, but it doesn't really matter. You will have points, because cabal points are attached to everything, almost everything. And then the effects you can get are like the Twist of Fate, no armor saves is game breaking, right? And then the other ones that go somewhere between nice and useful.
Doombolt is strong as well.
Doombolt is nice, yeah, for sure.
Especially in a game that there is not a lot of AP, it's a good way to say, hey, this unit.
Yeah. At a very basic level, Echoes is a CP or multiple CP. You have an extra move, which is nice, always nice to have. I mean,
Yeah, it's utility.
Yeah,
it's utility plus 2 big dumps. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's alright. It's alright. Thoughts? Starting with Colin, I guess, because you read it out.
Cool. It's probably A tier, to be honest. I don't know if it's as flat strong as some of the other ones, but it's definitely stronger than any of the +1 to hit ones.
Yeah. Cool. Val?
Yeah, A tier.
A tier. Raf?
I think it's the strongest one we've seen so far. I don't think we can overstate how ridiculous it is that they just turn off the armor saves on the unit. And then this is, of course, like a lot of the things, a metacore, right? But indications are that Terminator-type bodies are extremely hard to kill in this edition. To just suddenly turn them into a bunch of pansies with a 4-up save is...
Same as giving your weapons +2 AP, which is nice. But
it's massive in this edition, all right? Well, potentially 3, because how easy cover it is to get, right? It's effectively giving your army +3 AP. I don't know. It blows my mind. Against any given target, I think it's better. I understand, I don't know where it comes compared to Drukhari, but I think...
I mean, against Drukhari, the extra movement and then Doombolt is useful, right? So,
No, I meant, sorry, we've got Drukhari and S, and they get rerolls to hit on command, right? Here it has kill a unit on command, which is similar to the Loyalist Marines, I guess, right? So there is that, depending on the type of target, but it's up there for sure. It terrifies me because I use heavily armored stuff, so in my head, it's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. That's because I'm a Terminator and Custodes player, so I'm skewed.
Sure. As another player, it's like, okay, cool. It does nothing.
Same goes for guard and Tau. So I would say
this is so Raf's purely saying is based on Twist of Fate changes like a whole bunch of matchups in the meta, and then in the matchups where it doesn't matter, Doombolt is still incredibly useful. Extra movement against these movement armies you can keep up is incredibly useful, and even just worst case scenario, you're just converting it into CP, right? With Echoes.
Yeah, I would say it's better than Marines, but worse than World Eaters, because World Eaters is your entire army have better reach and it's heavy hitting and can destroy your face, and Doombolt is basically, Doombolt is a big smite, and you have Twist of Fate, which is similar to Oath, because Oath of Moments with whatever heavy shooting unit is effectively doing the same, so without the requirement of being 18 away. So I would say worse than World Eaters, better than Marines, because it have way more flexibility than Marines, and there is some matchups where Twist of Fate don't do anything, but you have the other things which are in these matchups not that amazing, but good anyway.
I was actually going to make a suggestion similar to Raf's, that I think this is verging on bottom of S. So I will accept A, because I think we're a bit wowed by Twisted Fate, maybe a bit too much, but I think it has to be top of A. So compared to World Eaters, there is no random component. You control what buff you get compared to rolling on that table.
Okay, where do you put it if you don't have the Twist of Fate? Because if you're looking at the armies now, you can see Drukhari.
Honestly, without Twist of Fate, I think I'd drop this to tier B.
So put it down in A or after the World Eaters, because just look at the armies. Drukhari don't care about Twisted Fate. World Eaters maybe care about it. Space Marines care about it. Knights not really. They're 3-up armor safe. You have 1 AP. They don't get cover, so you're fine there.
They get cover now.
Yeah, okay. It's 1 AP better.
Plus 2 AP, basically.
Yeah, it's plus 2 AP there. against one thing that is normally less than 200 points. Then you get the Chaos Marines where it's good. You get the Imperial Guard where it's not that good.
It's good against tanks, to be fair. It's good
Yeah,
against.
it's good, but tanks are normally less than 200 points, and yeah, with high toughness.
We're talking about one spot difference. I think Colin is the tiebreaker here. Better
Yeah.
or worse than World Eaters?
Better, because you get to choose.
I think you're slightly out
Okay.
of it, Pavel, but I get your point.
Yeah,
I
of
do
course,
get your
of course.
point, but it is the
I'm
movement
just saying
also
that
very
it's
nice.
you don't
You're
have the
also
reach
not-
to go in S. This is my argument. I'm
Of course,
fine.
okay, I accept that. It's a different tier to Drukhari, 100%. But I do think it's very marginally better than the other two in A tier.
Maybe. Then Marines for sure. For World Eaters, yeah,
Maybe. I see that.
I will agree
They're
with you guys.
very different. I'm okay to accept they're tied. World Eaters rules make them very good at what they do already, whereas Twisted Fate changes the game.
I own a Grey Knight army. There's nothing I'm more scared of than Twisted.
Yeah. Here is different points of opinion. Basically, I'm playing mostly shooting armies, and I'm more afraid to screen things that can advance and charge. So,
That's why I've gathered three of you. It was meant to be four of us, but for all the different expertise and different metas you guys play in. Just to point out, everybody of my three guests, I think, lives at least. Well, Raph and Colin live a couple 100 miles apart, and Pavel's about 2,000. Let's wrap up Chaos, shall we? Pavel, you've not read anything for a while, and I'm going to leave the Raph for the Imperial things, so explain what Chaos do. Demons, that is.
okay. Basically, I will read it because I have to refresh my memory for it.
Sure.
Basically, in your deployment zone, you have a Shadow of Chaos, and Shadow of Chaos is doing a lot of things for you. Basically, at the start of any phase, which means that you can take it in your phase and in the opponent phase, there is bad things happening there. The objective is considered if you control objectives, No Man's Land becomes Shadow, and then if you control objective in the opponent's zone, it becomes Shadow as well. And then your things are getting benefits when there is when they are in the Shadow. And basically, what are they? Each time the unit takes a battle shock test, add 1 to the test. And if the test is passed, 1 on it, again D3 wounds. So basically, cool healing.
Don't get battle shocked, basically.
Don't get battle shocks.
Don't battle shock demons.
So you can play around that. It's not great, not terrible. And you're making the battle shocks for your enemy worse. Basically, you're saying that they have -1 and suffer mortal wounds on it.
So battle shock actually starts. The summary of this is battle shock in the Shadow starts mattering because it equates immediately to wounds.
Basically, I would say that this is, in my personal opinion, on its own in vacuum S with a lot of potential. Basically, with a lot of things that are proccing the Shadow or deep striking or whatever, it immediately becomes dramatically better.
So there is nothing about deep striking because that's the detachment rule. So this is
Yeah,
the entirety of the...
that's why I'm saying a cliffhanger that I would put it on its own in C, because on its own is saying, hey, when battle shocks happens, worse things happen, but you can play around them. For example, you can overkill things and they don't take battle shocks, so you're getting the benefit for the demons. And the demons, if you have to take battle shock, this means that your units have survived, which is normally something that don't happen very often. So I would say on its own, C, with a lot of potential to stack with detachment rules, special rules, unit rules, etc. So this is my verdict for it.
Yeah, this is the most unfair one for judging just on the army rule, right? Because the army rule is putting in the base layer, the undercoat, that everything else builds off, right? And so I completely agree, right? Off the basis, it's extremely sort of vanilla. You can make an argument for D, like it's nice but whatever. The potential is stratospheric, right?
So this is where I just want to intervene that if your army-wide rule, rather than give you a bonus, is just setting up other rules, that means your detachment rules have to be better than the equivalent detachment rules in other armies, or your data sheets have to be better point for point, yada yada. and that's traditionally not how people view this game, which people don't know how to play, and that's fine. But also, I have a feeling how designers don't view this game, so I fully expect demons have their own unique units, so there's no such a thing as like Bloodletter in demons and Bloodletter not in demons being different. But it does put pressure on them to actually start catching up in other areas.
I'm saying better than knights, so bottom of C,
okay.
because compared to knights, you can play with the shadow on your own. For example, if one of your units is at half strength, you can fall back with it in the shadow and then regain it.
I think that the only thing that makes me think bottom of C is what Raph said, that a lot of units will remain not dead, so you can fall back with remnants of demon units behind walls and just regen for a little bit. Worth noting that D3 models, some of them might be 2-1 models, which is quite efficient in terms of bringing units back.
Yeah, beasts or whatever. For example, compared to the knights, here you have a play on your own. For example, something is damaged, it's not killed, it's below half strength. You can hide it for one turn or even not stage it forward and it can regain something. The regaining of units is giving you reach. So it's better than knights, definitely, but on its own, it's nothing amazing.
It's also the fact that a Shadows is very much a win more mechanic for No Man's Land.
Yeah.
Because if you already control half the objectives in No Man's Land, then you're doing pretty well.
I guess because it affects Battle Shock only on its own, you want to end your turn controlling half the objectives, which you should be. And then during the opponent's Battle Shock phase, they take mortals.
Yeah, and you can regain in your turn. So it's better because you're stepping with, for example, 2 chaff units on the middle objectives, or you're trading on the objectives.
Yeah.
You're getting it in your turn. Both your Battle Shock and your opponent Battle Shock triggers with the benefits.
Well,
and after that, the opponent is pushing you away.
In your turn, it won't trigger, I don't think, because the opponent will take the objectives away from you, presumably.
No. At the end of your turn, you're right. The Battle Shocks are not at the end, but yeah.
So Demonic Terror triggers more often than Demonic Manifestation if the game is flowing correctly.
Yeah, Manifestation is only if you retreat with a unit or you are already winning.
Yeah, which means you can retreat units into your deployment zone, basically, and heal them there. The Terror is nice because the units that will get Battle Shocked a lot of the times will be like the last remnants of a unit, and those D3 Mortals might just wipe the unit out. It's not great. It's definitely a subpar rule, but I do think it's a tier above those two. Actually, do you know what? Maybe it's not. I think I would... If I was Demons, I would swap this out to get Judgment tokens, to be honest.
I would swap it for Judgment tokens, but I'd swap it for most other things.
I think it's... You wouldn't swap it for Judgment tokens, you say?
No, because you don't want to lose the units to get a benefit.
I see. Okay. Raph, thoughts?
I think you would lose some Screamers to give your Greater Demon plus on the hit or something.
Okay, so this is it's basically
it's around there. I don't have a strong feeling.
All right, one up, one down. Pavo, you're the tiebreaker. Better or worse than Votan?
I would say worse. Assuming that maybe Votans will have smaller units.
Yeah, all right, cool. And that is all the chaos. Let's do some Imperial stuff because Raph hasn't spoken in a while. Let's do those Grey Knights. Grey Knights, Raph, take us through Teleport to Soul.
Okay, hopping Grey Knights. So, basically, putting it down, at the end of your opponent's turn, you can re-deep strike 3 Grey Knight units. Because that makes sense. Yeah. Usual deep strike, they basically just get picked up and deep strike. Yeah.
Okay.
Now this is this is that. I'll take that back, right? You come back in.
It is exactly a deep strike. It's a normal deep strike.
Yeah, I was going to say I started reading things backwards. Yeah, so basically you get to redeploy 3 units every turn.
Yeah. It's a downgraded teleport, right? Because you miss out on your own command phase. However, worth noting, you skip the battle shock phase as well. So, Grey Knights can never be battle shocked.
I believe
Real
they
Chaos Demons and Knights.
that you take the battle shock even if you're off the table.
Really? Okay, cool.
I believe so. I'm not. Don't quote me on that, but I remember reading something about that.
Okay, maybe
Immediately
it's the
quoting
case.
Colin.
That
Yeah.
is hilarious. What Colin's saying sounds about right to me, but it is generally speaking a worse teleport because you miss out on scoring if you want to redeploy. But it's not that far worse, and it comes at no cost. So this is like the first true utility thing I think we're seeing, where it has no. Well, no, there's a couple utility ones. They're just down in the bin here with battleshock tests. Right. So this is going to be hard to compare. But how would you rate your free teleport?
I just want to add one thing on it. Basically, this rule is stronger because of the ingress and because of the dynamic of the game. For example, you can deploy your entire army on the table and prevent your opponent to face rush you because you have, let's say, 1,000 points in reserves or 500 points in reserves. So you have the benefit of your entire army being on the table for countercharge if the opponent decides to be super aggressive. And then every turn you can remove the number of units you want in order to go for ingress or
So you can't ingress teleport assault units from my read of this rule because it tells you specifically to put them down in your movement phase. So they don't go back into reinforcements.
Then my bad on this. The other thing that is from core rules that it will be good. This will be extremely good if the game proceeds into turn 4 or 5 and it's competitive. Because with the new missions, this mobility when the map is more empty, it will allow you to score whatever type of things. For example, you have 3 guys somewhere and you decide that you have a mission to go in your opponent's table, in your opponent table quarter, or to put a flag somewhere, you can do that. And this is a good utility for small guys later stages. But if you don't have the punch to basically clear up the map a bit, then it will be useless because you'll be constantly screened.
I mean, it's never useless, right? Because you're forcing this screen for 5 turns instead of 2.
Yeah, you're forcing the
Worst case
screen for
scenario, you're
5
forcing
turns,
screens.
and then you have the ability to score whatever things later the rounds when the map is more clear.
Let's try and evaluate this. So starting with Raph, who read this out.
Yeah, I think. I mean, just to add to that, it's almost a definition of a rule that presumably, making an assumption here, become more and more powerful in the hands of someone that's better and better with it, right? Because it's one of these weird things, right? That it's hard to put a price on this. Presumably, someone will make this amazing. And yeah, Pavel's points are exactly right. You can the later in the game as well, the more powerful. I really like utilities like this, and I get bored of special rules that amount to +1 to hit, right?
Yeah.
So my default, and I completely am prepared to be completely wrong on this, my default is that I prefer it to all the +1 to hit ones. But yeah, but that's just my gut feel 40k player as opposed to
I think that's
math.
correct, right? So we rated the +2 movement and feel no pain in tier A. So clearly the teleporting thing should be at least in A tier.
I think it's very good. My worry is that it forces Grey Knights into a shooting build because you come down reinforcements, you're 9 inches away, you're now going for 9-inch charges at best.
It also has vulnerable.
And I don't think Grey Knights are a good shooting army based on the fact that, they've never really been a shooting army.
The one thing I agree. The one thing I guess to worth saying is that it does allow the redeploy in a real sense is useful, right? So when you have these foot combat armies and you have to fight something on the right hand side of the table, once you've killed that, you then have the ability to re-teleport it to the other side, to where the rest of the game's going on. So, but yes, I mean fundamentally there's that, and straight line power. It's not the same as world beaters, right? Just as a benchmark.
No,
Right?
absolutely not. No, it's much more
not
fiddly,
there.
right? It's a full-on utility kind of.
I would say behind the space marine because it requires some resources from your opponent to screen, because
Yeah.
otherwise bad things can happen. And your army cannot be split like with the, let's say, dead guard. For example, for dead guard, if they are melee army, you're saying, okay, I can rotate this flank if I'm fast enough, and here I cannot do that. Basically, you have to face the entire Grey Knight's army the entire game. You cannot isolate units.
I'm fairly happy with
Oh.
it being A tier, because I don't think it's quite S, right? Because there is counter.
Oh no, no, no.
No,
no.
I don't think it's at the bottom of A though. I think it might be slightly higher up.
I will say it gets better the better the player is, but it also gets worse the better your opponent is because they'll just screen out better. And it is very reasonable to screen entire board halves. I would have a bottom of A.
They still have to score. Okay, that's fair. I think it's enough votes for bottom of A to kind of lock it in there.
Yeah, I think it's straight line power of the other three. Just
It's because the I guess in my head you still have to screen for 3 extra turns, but I guess turn 1 doesn't
I
really
think that's
count.
powerful, right? I think if the shooting's good enough, where you can be like, for 3 turns I'm going to kill all the screens, and all of a sudden I can go wherever I want.
Yeah.
Then it's very good, right? But yeah, if things like the old infiltrators still exist, and they can just sort of hide behind walls and block off half the table,
Yeah,
it's a lot less good.
fair enough. No, let's go. It's a good place. It's the right tier and more or less the right spot for it.
Yeah, for example, the World Eaters have the speed and the DPS in later rounds if they need it.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
it's better.
That's true. Cool. I'll grab the next one. I will grab Genestealer Codes because I'm the resident Tyrannid player. Genestealer Codes. Army roll, cult ambush. Right, this is a very long piece of text, but what happens is, basically, when your unit dies, you roll a dice. On a 4-up, you put it into reserves, and then you bring it back to life again. In the end of the opponent's movement phase, so during ingress time, I believe.
Yes.
Battle line units don't have to roll, so they just come back. And when you do come back, when you succeed with the dice, you have to place a little marker. And if the opponent at any point basically ends up within 9 inches of it, your marker disappears. So there is counterplay to it. You don't always just come back. Have I missed anything mechanically? I don't think I have.
Yeah, only one thing you forgot to
Oh,
say.
characters don't come back with the board.
You forgot to say the most important thing.
Yeah, you don't need to be wholly within the 9 of the
Of
marker.
course, and yes, you come back from the marker, but you only have to touch it so you can string like a crazy person.
Oh, and you forgot one other thing.
Yeah?
It's batshit insane.
Yes.
Right, that's-
So,
That's it, yeah.
so any army on this. So what this does is it makes you recycle your battle line units all the time and everything else 50% of the time. So if any army would trade for this, the units have to be like unreasonably expensive to compensate for how powerful this rule is.
If we're talking about vacuum, this is in its own tier.
Yeah, this is the true S tier. This is what might compress the rest of this down, to be honest. Because Drukhari are nowhere near Genestealer Code level.
No, nothing is near Genestealer level. Basically, they're god modes with this rule in a vacuum. You're saying, hey, my troops are immortal and they can string 30 something inches from the marker, and my unit
to
can.
mind where the opponent is, so they can kind of be screened out, but they're still immortal. So I need to. This one army forces the other things to get rearranged.
Weirdly, I think, for example, Drukhari are probably very good in GSC, right? Because the counterplay to GSC is extreme speed, right?
No, it's not. Just imagine that I'm putting the marker in the bottom table edge, and I'm having 6 infantry units. 3 of them are dedicated to stay on the marker, on top of it, so you cannot reach it. It's
okay, but then we're talking resources again. I mean, I understand that there are sort of, but you can eventually, unless you block off everywhere that a venom can land, right? You can, which is very hard to do. Like there is some. I'm not saying that it's a hard counter or anything. I'm just saying that there is a sort of army that has some play.
It has some counterplay, but it's still ridiculously good, right? There's no army. Like,
I played in my head with this army because I have GSC, and the thing is that if you put it in the table quarter, in the edge, you can screen it pretty easily, and you can put it in 2 edges, and after the opponent goes, you are moving the counter and you're not saying which unit. So you can say, all right, you sacrificed a lot of resources to go there and take my counter, great. This is the cheapest unit that you have killed the previous turn. and the rest are coming back, and you're down trading even when you manage to make your counterplay. So it's batshit crazy, and everything else have 50% refund. It's not 50, it's 75 because the refunded units can refund the next turn again
I mean,
and again
you
and again.
realistically only get 2 chances in a game, I think, most of the time, but it's still batshit insane, I think. Like it's way better than paint tokens.
Yeah,
It's definitely tier above.
I have the idea that the design when they start making the design, they split the guys. Hey, everybody's making 4 codexes, and the cleaning lady is making the last one. And yeah, this is what happened.
So I've rearranged.
I'll let Colin talk in a second because he also has played JC before. But just as I'll just put this out there for posterity in case I'm right, and it's about 5%. But I actually reckon it'll be less strong than we think. Like 6 months from now, we'll be like, it's fine.
Yeah, if they say that the things are coming wholly within 9, or they say that it's 1 unit per turn is reviving, or they say the units are insanely priced.
Or the units could just be crazy expensive, right? That's it.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah.
But at this point, you're relying, again, to bring up our little diagram on the screen, you're relying on the other aspects to be terrible for them to offset this.
Yeah, and you have to have multiple terrible things. For example, the Neophytes have to be more than 12 points, etc.
I'm thinking about 10 points. I mean, let's not argue about it. The point is they have to cost almost twice as much as the guardsmen they are to not be.
And to use Harista's point, would you choose this rule over your own?
Yes.
Everyone would say yes. Even if it was just 50% time you get your units back, right? Even if you ignore the...
Even if you don't have battle line, yeah, absolutely. Always.
Yeah, whatever the army is. Please give me 50% chance to revive my crisis unit.
Just a quick check with you guys. So I've compressed the tiers a bit. I've chosen to combine the tier that had all the +1 to hit things in one place. I think
It's fine.
I could have another tier in theory, but I think it's unnecessary. We want it nice and neat. I think that's about right. Because do we agree the biggest boundaries are really between Grey Knights and Imperial Knights, right? Because that's a big skill thing. Whereas the boundary between Tau and Death Guard was a bit...
I think it will be cleaner if we don't rate the gestures, say that they are ungodly mistake in that gold tier, and then continue.
Add 3 more tiers and carry on. Yeah.
Meanwhile, on an unrelated note, looking at eBay for Dean Stealer Army.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about these armies, you can buy various Necromunda squads, and all of them can be a Steel army together. Because it's just...
And the printer go brrrr.
Oh, I wouldn't want to deal with 150 resin models. But yeah, fair enough.
It's doable.
Yeah. Let's bounce back to Colin and let's do the Eldari. Because I feel like the Gene Steel were lonely in Yestir. So let's give him some company. Maybe. The other elves. Colin, hit us up. Sorry that you get all the essays, but you play elves.
Yeah.
You play Eldari and Chaos Knights.
It's Miracle Dice, except you roll 12 at the start of the turn, essentially.
Toward the start of the game.
Sorry, yes. Yeah. It's very, very strong. On its own, it's not actually as strong as Gene Stealer Pulse.
No, of course not.
Arguably on its own, it's probably not as strong as Drukari.
That was interesting. So you have 3 pain tokens that give you rerolls, plus a pain token. Well, I guess to generate more, right? So they end up with about 12 pain.
You generate more in the rule itself.
Do you reckon overall you would get noticeably more than 12 pain tokens over the course of a game?
Yes.
So you start with 3, you have to kill 7, 8 units in Battle Shock once or twice.
Yeah, you do it 100%.
Of course.
And having full reroll is better than reroll 1 hit.
No, this isn't a reroll a hit. This is a set of hit to a certain control.
It's better than having a dice that you have to do for something, right?
That makes sense. So if you're not modifying the dice, you're only half of them, or out of those 12, you're gonna have some 1s and 2s that you can't do anything.
Yes, that are useful. On its own, I actually think it's a B tier. Arguably C tier.
Ooh.
In your current, with the re thing, I think it's probably C.
Okay.
So I mean, just
Interesting.
assuming perfectly average dice, right? So you
Yeah,
have
you get two of each.
realistically, yeah, like 6 4+s.
Yeah.
That's like, it's not as powerful. Now you can front load. You can combo up, right? You can do one, like if you happen to somehow have a unit that shoots and does loads of mortal wounds. If you happen to have a 6, like I don't know, these hypothetical things I'm talking about.
Yeah, well,
And
you know,
somehow
you
make
can proc
6 is going to be
devastating
amazing.
wounds and lethal hits and sustains. You can use the 6s for all sorts of things. You can use the 4s and 5s to pass various invulnerable
It's
saves.
just twice, right? In the game, like,
Yeah.
is as much as I dislike +1 to hit, right? You go, okay, you can have +1 to hit for your army for the entire game, or twice you can proactively proc a devastating wound.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at.
Yeah, it's behind the +1 to hits. And the thing is
Okay.
that, but on the other hand,
It's not in
you
D
have
tier though, right? So it's gonna
Oh.
have to be above Death Guard, surely, because it's useful still. You get to use those dice whenever you want. You can have one turn where you spend all 8 of the useful ones at once for like a
Oh,
crazy alpha strike.
on a second thought, maybe it's better than the +1 to hits because a 6 is on advance and charge is giving you crazy reach, which can change games, even though it's once
So you can,
per the game.
it helps. It's plus X to your charge, but it's not.
Yeah, but just imagine that you have 2 6s and you're saying,
you can't use them both.
yeah, you can, but if you have 1 6s and you can sit with it, you can threaten a bit more, which is compressing the map for your opponent, which is very important. For example, if I know that the Banshees can come and hit me in my building, this means that I cannot use this building.
Yeah.
And this is something that changed the dynamic of the game, so it's very game breaking. The other thing is, just a funny note, the 1s and 2s can be used for battle shocks to throw the Chaos Demons and Knight. And Tyrannies later.
I mean, battle
And
shocks
just, I like it.
Yeah.
Now, just to, I mean, I was being very harsh on it. Thinking, if we take a step back and just think about an armor we haven't got onto, but Sisters in Ninth, right?
Yeah.
Miracle dice are ridiculously powerful, right? And there's no guarantee that a Sisters army gets 12 in a game on a current ninth, or plus or minus around that level. And they can manipulate whatever, but it is getting that 5 when you need that 5 or that 6 when you need that 6 is good. I mean, I was being very harsh, but
I think they have to be at least bottom of B, right? I do think it's better than +1 to hit.
Yeah, I do agree because really, 1/6 is on a charge row is from deep strike or for basically threatening one building. It's terrible things to behave.
And the thing I always like to point out is that not all dice rolls are made equal, right?
Yeah, of
Like,
course.
the fact you can decide the important ones are the ones that matter.
Yeah, you can bring your avatar in the middle and be like, hey, I ignored the first 6 saves I gotta take, because fuck you. For that one turn. Cool. I mean, any thoughts about, first of all, the tier? Is B tier the one that we think this is at? So it definitely was in Drukhari, right? So, noticeably so.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's worse or better than Grey Knight.
It's not with everything we know, but based purely on the rule without anything else, no, it's worse than Drukhari.
Yeah. So it's better than +1 to hit equivalents in C tier, though, right?
Yeah.
So, is it better than Grey Knights? That's
Maybe.
a weird comparison.
Right? And then probably not as good as Marines or whatever.
So you think here somewhere?
Yeah.
I think that's about right. Yeah, okay.
In hindsight, we know that this will be broken as hell with the other rules, but in a vacuum,
I mean, we've seen all the broken data sheets and the broken detachment and the broken.
There's also an important point, Riste. There's also an important point that this is going to exist online, your name attached to it, and someone's going to take it out of context if you put it into D tier. And then going to be like,
of course. No, absolutely no. It's fine. It's, we don't need. I'm going to drag all your credibilities down with me. You're all signing off on this. So yeah, let's not put the Eldari below the middle for the sake of longevity and people not understanding the. Look, that's why I keep flashing this on the screen. Army-wide rule only, very important. Okay.
Yeah, we came around the Eldari before and after the scoring.
Colin, just before I move on, are you happy with that being the resident Eldari player? Is that sensible?
I find it very hard to agree with it based because of what we do know about the rule and the way you can interact with it and mess with it. I think it's probably understating it.
Understating. Okay.
Yeah, like with what we know, the rule is S tier.
Yeah, we know, but we're limiting ourselves because we don't know the comparable rules for the other areas.
Yeah,
I think
it has to be somewhere in B tier, right? It's either the top, the bottom, or kind of in middling. So how would you say it compares to oaths? I guess if you have two of each dice, and you can't, it's worse. Yeah, and I think it's better than Grey Knights, just because you can proc it like in a specific point, and you can do a bunch of different things with it. I think that's roughly okay. We'll have a very look in the end after the final four armies.
After 2 weeks, we can gather again and basically make
I
a breakdown
don't
of
quite like
armies.
how wonky this suddenly went, because G-Stereo Codes ruined the nice little distribution we had going. But what are you going to do?
It's ruined everything.
They absolutely did. You started talking about sisters before we got into sisters, so do the honors and tell us about Acts of Faith.
Yeah, I mean, just to keep it very, very simple, it's exactly the same as the other one, but instead of starting with 12 dice, you get 1 dice every turn, and you get 1 dice every time one of your units is destroyed.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it can be used for exactly the same things, or very close to it.
So you're going to end up with slightly more dice, but they're going to be trickling in rather than you planning for them. So it's the same,
Behind Grey Knights?
slightly worse. Yeah, I think it's.
You can't combo, right? So it's by definition presumably worse than.
Yeah, it's
Crossbow.
got to be below Odari. Absolutely below Odari. But you can wait patiently and set it up, so it's definitely still in the B tier with the other things. I think Pavel's right. I think the Grey Knights then kind of maybe leapfrog the sisters.
For sure, because you cannot plan around this based on the rule only.
Yeah, that's true.
For example, if you have a lucky first 2 turns, you'll be sapped.
And even in ninth ed, right? You have to always fear that they're going to have 9 for the charge or whatever.
Yeah.
It's an important difference that they can't do that, right? So they can get the 6, sure, but it is yeah.
If they get the 6 in turn 1, they will be super scary, but a lot of the times they won't get it in turn 1 or 2, and they will be sapped. Because the biggest difference and the biggest power of the auto 6s is A, deep strike, B, threatening a specific house or a staging point and saying, fuck these staging points, you cannot go there because you get completely wrecked there. So this is the problem with the auto 6, and that's why I rate it so high. And in this case, it's not reliable. Maybe you don't get it at the very beginning of the game.
So above or below Grey Knights? I'm just fixing up this. It had to add an extra tier because of it's so visually unpleasant.
I would say below Grey Knights.
Okay. Raf, Imperial Man, the 2 Imperial armies that you have interest in?
I don't have a strong. Grey Knights is so hard to grade, right? Like it's powerful. I'm happy to go with this. Right? I think in the hands of a good player, Grey Knights is incredible overall.
Colin, final thoughts before the final Xenos?
Yeah, no, I would agree it's worse because just the lack of being able to use it on charged dice.
Cool. Alright. I'll pick up the Necrons, I guess. We're going to go Necrons, Orcs, and then Nids, because Nids and Orcs actually have the same rule, but manifesting in a different way. Necrons, Reanimation, super basic. If you've taken some damage, you get D3 wounds back. And then there's a bunch of text explaining how you get models if there's no more healing to be done. That is all.
Yawn.
Only triggers on hurt unit. So first of all, definitely worse than +1 to hit, right? This is our little mid.
Oh, I had it right. I think it's potentially the worst, maybe? One of the worst. Yeah, I had it right down the bottom.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean,
there's all caveats here, right? Where if the units are great, then bringing models back is great, right? But as far as just going from a 9th age player, 9th ed player to great, you heal a couple of wounds a turn. Yeah,
for sure. I mean,
I'm saying
Yeah.
I would say that it's definitely better than 9th edition because here it don't matter in which turn you have suffered the damage, which means that anytime one of your units is not completely destroyed, you can rest one turn, regain some strength, and then go. And the other thing that is very important is that reanimating is increasing your reach because it's happening in your command phase, which means that you can steal objective, you can move, let's say, if it's infantry, D3 models can be 6 inches to your charge or 5 inches to your charge, basically reducing the distance between you and your opponent. And it's happening every turn. So it's not like the Necrons now when I'm shooting, if I don't shoot you with one go, you're getting something back and that's it. Here it's the entire map, which means that you can revive destroyers, you can revive bikes.
It's better on the bigger units, yeah. If they take
You have to live
I
though.
think it's potentially less good. Yeah, I think like it's more likely to die as a warrior block, right? Now
Yeah,
than
yeah.
it was.
I'm looking more at the destroyers and other
I
units.
guess
And
that's
basically,
fair.
I'm thinking that on average you'll be getting around 200 points per game from this rule, which is not a
I
lot.
don't agree with that because I don't think opponents would split damage that much. So it's the same kind of concept as Battle Shock. Only a unit or two in your army, if that, will be taking Battle Shocks. So this will only be proccing on realistically one unit. Like it's very
It depends on how the game shakes out, to be honest. If the game shakes out where everything's super durable, nothing gets one shot, then it's an amazing rule. If the game is more like 9th edition, where if you can see it, it's dead, then it's a terrible rule.
I don't think you'll see it and it's dead, but like it's a case of even if the game is not very deadly, right? The smart thing for people to do is to still focus fire on a unit, especially if it has this rule on, even normally. So they're not gonna dent like 4 of your units and walk off if they can help it.
Keep in mind that you can say have some units behind the wall, some units in front of the wall, which means that in
Yeah,
MSU
of
armies it's
course.
not easy to focus fire it.
And reanimating it in a command phase always allows for some shenanigans,
Yeah,
which is the
reanimating
thing.
in command phase is giving you, if you on average, if you roll 2, this means between 6 and 5 inches to your charge, which is amazing. You can get an objective.
Okay, but it's okay. It goes into tricks, and there's two tiers of trick, right? We have all the tricks at the top, and then we have +1 to hit in the middle. It's not very tricksy.
It's
And
not
then
a
we have
movement trick, so I
so
would say
it's
somewhere
gotta
in
be
the.
D or E. So is it trash or is it really trash? I guess.
I think it's
I don't
D.
think,
I think.
yeah, it's not the bottom tier, whatever bottom tier.
Okay. I mean, I think bottom of D is the best I can give it, to be honest, because custodes are definitely better than this.
Yeah. Just imagine that with this, if you get 3 destroyers per game, it's already a hundred points.
I'm okay with it being bottom of D. Maybe even above Mechanicus, but I don't think that's the case.
Depending on how little the game is at the end, basically. Right now, it's very easy to get cover. Not a lot of armies ignore cover, and with basic cover and take down a stratagem, 20 warriors become
Yeah,
very.
I understand. It's very annoying.
Just imagine that 20 warriors with go down and easy way to get cover because only one of them have to be behind something. Immediately makes you harder to kill. And if some of them are behind the wall, it starts.
The more you speak, more I like it. You know, I think it might be.
There?
Well,
Oh,
it's,
well,
it's in that good player thing, right? If you watch the good players use Necron, the objective stealing ability of regrowing stuff is real, plus the charges and stuff.
I can even make an argument to go somewhere top D or bottom C because, yeah, I definitely see that mostly the AP is reduced for the anti-infantry guns. Basically, anti-tank guns are with high AP, true, but the infantry guns are generally getting -1 AP, and you're getting +1 AP from the cover, one save from the cover because it's way easier to get cover on your 20 guys, which was almost impossible in 9th. And on top of that, you're getting the stratagem that can give you additional save.
so no. Oh, I see the go to ground. No, there's no stratagem for additional save.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, basically
It's fun
it's easier
if
to
you want.
get the cover. So
So you're making a pitch for C?
somewhere in the or possibly very bottom of C. For the bottom of C, the game has to be less lethal.
Better than what? Sorry.
I would argue it's better than Death Guide. I would agree. It's bottom of C.
Okay. All right. I'm okay with it there. I think this is fine. I think it's definitely worse. Not that much worse, but it is worse than just damage. The +1 to hit, which is a very good buff.
If you look at the armies, Giant Stewards are, for them it's hard to wipe out a unit. For Drukhari, depends.
What I mean is, if you have +1 to hit, you're killing more of the opponent than if you're
True.
D3, right?
I'm just looking at the armies and which armies have potential to wipe out entire units, and some of them actually, for them, is not that easy.
I think we're being generous to Necrons purely because resing in the command phase is so glitchy in this game.
Yeah.
And that is the only saving grace of this rule.
This combined with the reducement of AP for anti-infantry guns plus the easier access to cover are the three things that are buffing this thing up.
The more I think
This is very glitchy. It doesn't say it has to be restored in coherency.
Yeah, they don't need. So if you get two guys, this means
That's gonna get executed, but as it is,
I mean, I think that is. I think reanimation might be in the core rules because it's quite a lot of things to do
nevertheless,
it.
as written now,
No,
between
what Colin is suggesting is you reanimate a warrior in like the opponent's deployment zone and then kill the rest of your unit, and that's the warrior that unit is there now, having teleported across the board. I'm pretty sure that's not the case.
S tier. Let's do this.
Yeah. If that's how it works, then yeah, absolutely S tier, because all your units are anywhere you want them to be, which is pretty funny.
okay.
I'm okay with it there for the sake of progress. Somebody else pick up orcs so I can do the final coup de grace with my army of choice. Pavel, you haven't read out enough stuff, and you're the Xenos guy, so tell me about Wa.
For Wa, I love it, basically. If your army is orcs, once per battle, at the start of any battle round, you can say Wa. Wa give you advance and charge, amazing. Wa give you +1 strength and attacks, and give you 5 up in move. Which means that normally you're threatening Wa the entire game, which means that your opponent is calculating that you're way faster than you are, which is important. And the one turn that after you stage, you're not only more durable, you're faster and you're hitting harder. And +1 strength and +1 attack is actually amazing for orcs.
It's very unfortunate that it's in the battle round start, isn't it, rather than in your command phase.
Yeah, but the battle starts. For example, if I'm first, it's extremely. For example, here is very important. If I'm first with the orc or second. If I'm second, it's not that great. If I'm first, it's amazing. Which means that I would say that it's either somewhere in B, but like bottom of B, or maybe, yeah, definitely above C, for sure.
Okay.
Someone saying something. So
Yeah, that's it for me.
it's brilliant, and the battle round thing is actually a buff a lot of the time compared to turn, right? Because it means you can do it in your opponent's turn. If they go first and they're going to shoot you, you go like, well, whatever.
Yeah, see, fair.
Without going into broad strokes, right? Vehicles are tougher right now than they were before, especially against sort of human-sized, anti-infantry or anti-heavy infantry weapons. So a mechanized orc army is slightly terrifying because you can, it's just you can imagine it, right? They go first, they post up in the middle of the table.
And they go, wow. Yeah.
You got not only is all your stuff tough, you've all got 5 up invans, and then they're going to be advancing and charging you with Blood Angel buffs, following turn.
And you have the stratagem for 6 mortals on top of it, because most of the orc things have strange, wacky things for extra strength.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it's one of the, because it's a one-use thing. It's hard to,
100%.
Depends on your mindset, right? Consistency versus spike in power, right? That's the question.
It's one of the 2 or 3 things that can absolutely spike. So you have the Eldari, who can be consistent or spiky, but most of the other stuff is one or the other, right? So this is the first. We've left the spike, the one-use only things for last, effectively.
I would say definitely be above Grey Knights and
I
I
mean,
would argue against the other.
I'm comfortable that it's in B tier. Is it as good as Drukari?
It's not as good as Drukari.
No.
No,
Drukari get that every turn.
Yeah,
they get
exactly.
it where they wanted. When
yeah,
they want.
Drukari get the Dua bonuses for their entire army for the entire game. So
So
no.
I would place it at least here. Actually, no. I mean, at least here, right? And then it's weird because the sisters and Eldari can kind of pace their stuff, whereas orcs, like that, being only one turn is a big drawback, right? Because as Raph said, you do that thing, you go forward, you go wah, but then if that doesn't work out for the rest of the game, you just don't have an army rule.
Yeah, for example, it's better than Systems in my opinion because it's just less reliable.
Yeah, they can't pace theirs. Okay, that's fair.
And it's maybe better than Knights because you have two options. Option one, you're infantry heavy, which means, hey, my rocket boys can go the entire map and attack you with fly, but they're infantry, so they're one of the fast fly infantry units that go through walls, and advancing charge on them is amazing. +1 attack, +1 strength means +1 to wound against most of the infantry, and +1 strength also means that against some of the vehicles you will be wounding on 5 instead of 6, which is a big difference. Bonus attacks on a lot of models is amazing, and having your random transport have a big flaily thing, and suddenly your trash transport starts to make 6 mortal wounds on charge. With advancing charge is scary. So, yeah. I will rate them high.
Stuff you only need for one turn, right?
Yeah, it's one turn, but and
so how much fire, basically, is the question, right?
I put it above Grey Knights, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, this is iffy.
I think this is about right.
I would argue above Eldari, purely based off what we know, or off the rule.
I'm happy to go with that too.
I'm happy to go with
yeah,
that as
okay,
well. I don't
fine.
think it's better than Oath, though, because Oath is every turn it's a big spike, whereas the Y is... Yeah, alright, cool. Alright.
Close it off.
That's nice. And the last one, I've left it for last because it's a dear one to my heart. So I'm going to read it and I'll let you guys argue over it because I'm clearly way too biased and hurt. So, Tierlist get 2 special rules, which is irritating to cover. One of them is Synapse. So Synapse basically says you have an aura around your Synapse models that's 6 inches. And within that aura, you take Battleshock tests on 3 dice. The purpose of Synapse is similar to the Death Guard one, where it sets up other things, but it does give you like some sort of debuff. Buff in this case. The real rule is Shadowing the Warp, which is basically the Tyranids shout Wa, but to each other psychically, and the enemy takes Battleshock tests across the entire map. Crucially, this happens outside of the Battleshock phase, so they can't auto-pass with a stratagem. So you do force a true Battleshock test on everybody that stays on for a turn, and they can't avoid it in any way, shape, or form. And that is all. Discuss.
I can start.
I can't remember the. So I'm just a clarification. So the timing of it is definitely outside of the normal. In their turn, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So carry on, Pavel.
Okay, in my opinion, this is above Votan, but bottom of D or upper E tier, because this rule on its own says, hey, one of the game turns I'll get some extra victory points, which is always nice, because if you shout this against Necron, for example, normally the guys on the objects will be 6 leaders, 6 or 7 leadership, which means that some of them will fail and you will mess up the scoring for one turn of your opponent, which is good, and will award you direct victory points. And this you can pull it against most armies, not all armies, but most armies. So this is good. On the other hand, there is a lot of abilities that says, hey, if you control this objective last turn with this unit, it's sticky. So this is sad. But yeah, you can get victory points out of this directly on its own. And on the other hand, you're dumping the Demon and Chaos Knight rules, which is also reasoning why it's above them.
but it's not quite as good as +1 to hit. I don't think it's too random if it does anything useful for you or not.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's bottom D or upper A, something like that.
I would have it as top of D.
Better than Vanguard.
Yes, we've already had this. I don't write Death Guard.
Okay, Raf?
Well,
Sorry, you're breaking up a lot there. I think
so I'm just saying that you and I have spent far too many hours when we should have been doing work, probably, arguing about this already. So this is, I'm not saying same power, that's a separate point I'll get to, but it's similar to Grey Knights in that it's hard to gauge, right? It's a thing. It's the only one here that directly can result you in just directly just winning a game, right? Everything else is buffing a unit that you then have to use right, everything else. In a tight game, late game, where suddenly your opponent gets 0 on primary, and or you get to contest easily because there's stuff that's on objective suddenly has 0 obsec, and you just get to throw a termagant on there and it's yours. And the secondaries that come off the back of that as well. Like, it's the only one in here that just directly, with luck, I'm not saying like mathematically it will happen every time or anything, but with luck, and even, with even less luck required, if it happens to exist something in the army that makes Battleshock harder to pass, like, this is the one army rule where you can be playing a neck and neck draw game, you activate your rule, you win the game, right? Like, none of the others do that. So it makes it really hard to judge because, consistency, as we keep going back to on the +1 to hit stuff, is, you could argue, better than anything else, right? Because consistently you're doing more damage. And, GSC is mad and Chikari really good. But the potential power of this is just, a lot of the hardest games I've played come down to, anywhere between, 3 and 12 victory points at the end of the game, right? And the activation of this can cause 20+ point flips. A lot of the time it won't. So, where do you put that? I don't know.
I think 20 is an overstatement, but it can cause 5.
No, but I mean,
fairly regularly.
Late game, right? There are not many units lying around. You can blank and put an opponent's primary, get your secondaries, ruin their secondaries. There's all sorts of things that can happen from it, but 20 is extreme, but it can happen. So it's one of those that's slightly. So I struggle to where to put it because it's the one thing on here that can just win a game, but most of the times it will be worse than the others. So that makes me want to put it somewhere in the middle, I guess, because I guess, I don't know how you grade on that bell curve, or if, one extreme is game winning, the other extreme is it literally does nothing.
Yeah, I get you. So I've put a lot of thought into this, and I've actually warmed up to Shadow in the Warp since the beginning, mostly because it is unavoidable. So the easiest comparison and why we did this back to back is orcs, because they do a one-off game thing. So orcs are the absolute cap of where this could go, because the orc Y is better than Shadow in the Warp and Synapse together. If I could swap as a Tierlist player into Wa, if I could psychically think Wa instead and get advanced in charge across my entire army, that wouldn't even be a consideration.
You will swap for that guard and Custodes as well.
I would, so that's where the top of D kind of not confusing, but it's a little bit iffy, because I would absolutely take the Custodes rule. I'm not actually sold on the Death Guard one personally.
I would have it as slightly better than the Necron.
Ooh, that's interesting. See, I wouldn't go anywhere near C tier, to be honest, but I thought Necrons would be over geared.
I would say either behind Necron or above that guard.
So it's absolutely not E. There is value in this rule. Also, we can't forget Synapse. Synapse is a weird addition, but to evaluate it fairly, Tyranids do have the best leadership in the game through Synapse, which means you're getting Battleshocked a little bit less. The other thing that you guys are slightly glossing over, or the Shadow, is it does stop stratagems. So using it aggressively, it stays on for the whole turn. So in the games we're in the middle, turning off the capability to use strats on random units means, for example, in my turn I can charge, and I know that you can't interrupt the second unit I've charged. which is nice.
I mean, you can do that if they fail their 1 in 4.
What I mean is they
It's not
put
1 in 4, right? It's not a 1 in 4. Like half the
It's-
time it's 50-50. Like for
no,
half the game.
no. It's nowhere near 50-50. It's nowhere near 50-50. It's 1 in 3.
Well-
1 in 3 on 6 up, right?
Okay, we make
1 in 3, 1 in 4.
Yeah, but
Sure,
if you,
and then-
if
and
you
then
have 12 units,
let's just imagine. Just imagine. I know we're not doing this. Let's just imagine we know for a fact that there's a thing out there that gives +1, -1 to all these rolls. Then Marines are leadership 7. Custodians are leadership 7.
Which is still not 50-50.
Right, like-
Still not 50-50, right?
Sure, but I mean, it'll happen.
You happen enough. So
Yeah.
what I was getting at is not the one specific unit, but they have, you can choose to blow it in your command phase if you can't disrupt their scoring. And then the units they've put out in the front, let's say there's 4 of them, 1 of them fails, so you charge that and something else, is what I mean. So you have you can choose to do this in your turn, even though it's only half the duration, if you don't want to give away the chance for the opponent to react. And part of the charm is that if you don't blow it straight away, you can keep it in your back pocket and they have to think about it. So they have to double stack their objectives with units, and the same way they have to screen against knights, except to much less of a degree. So as a trick, for me, it's definitely in the below half. It's below +1 to hit, for sure. So it's somewhere in these tiers, but I'm making the case that it's not not E, sorry.
I don't think anyone's arguing it's E. It's definitely above E.
It's above it. It's definitely, I would say D. C is technically now below middle as well. I can see the argument for it being here, at the bottom of C. I could see it being above Necrons.
I could see it about the same as Necrons, to be honest.
yeah.
Yeah, because
Same.
because Synapse does do stuff. Obviously, the Tierlist data sheets, we know that they're inflated, but really, if you could test on 3d6 in your leadership 6, you'd never fail Battleshot. So that would be cool. Your Synapse creatures in leadership 7, they rarely fail Battleshot with this, which is helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a minor
nice
buff
bonus.
from the synapse, and you have the one off that can swing the neck games.
It's a weird one for me because I rate the Custodes rules a lot higher than the rest of you guys.
We're looking at it in vacuum, for example.
We are absolutely. So, like, I wouldn't trade the Tyranids for Death Guard. I wouldn't pick up the Farts. I wouldn't pick up any of the Chaos Demons and Night rules. I would pick up Judgment tokens, but that's in the context of Nits having, like, chaff, so I think they would pick up Shadow if they could choose, so that's probably, like, a weird thing. This feels
Yeah.
I think I would. I'm not sure. I would trade it. Would I trade it for a Necron one? There's an argument to be made there as well. So, to put
I think it's an interesting one. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, no.
No, I think it's an interesting one. Just as a side, I know it's not the exercise we're doing.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting, just as a thing, it'd be interesting to see how this shifts, because we also know the detachment rules for all of these, right?
We don't know World Eaters or Chaos.
That's right, yeah, so we don't actually have all the info.
we don't. Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's just
We
interesting.
have the rest
Yeah.
of them, do we?
Come again?
I think with the rest of the
I
detachment
think we
rules.
do, yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
do, yeah.
Just as an interesting, because I think, as I said, I have no idea where to put it, and your logic makes a lot of sense.
So he has to be below Works, I know that for a fact, so he can't be higher than C tier. That's pretty much the line where that draw in the sand, because I would absolutely take Wa, and they would absolutely not take Shadow and Synapse as a trade.
Yeah, but the thing is that we cannot easily compare it because, for example, with Tau I would never take Wa, but yeah.
Yeah, you would. It gives you 5 up invuln.
yeah.
Yeah, and +1 attack. You gotta go and beat things with Groot.
No, it's Enforcers. Something that I
like
have did
bunch
a
of-
lot of time.
Yeah, it's Yeah,
Yeah.
Tau would take Shadow over Wa, but it's the only army that would do that.
Sounds about right. Basically, really, if the army sheets and all the rules are good, and we know that, for example, we have Hensai that one of the units is giving -1 to the Shadow of the Warp and the Battleshot text. This means that in most of the games you can make one swingy turn in which you're screwing your opponent primary and you're buffing your because you'll be controlling more,
Yeah.
which can easily result in 12 points difference, and 12 points is massive, which means you can win neck-to-neck game, or you can win more in WTC format, so where you need to. For example, you're winning, let's say, 12 8 win, and suddenly you start winning 14 or something like that.
It's also the higher competitive level, the more people hate getting their plans disrupted. So there is like
Yeah.
increasing value of Battle Shock. I think Tierlist on a mid-table level, or people are just like, oh, I don't care, like you just do whatever. And then they start double stacking objectives, start thinking about how to cover units that can't use interrupts and all sorts of things.
Have in mind that before that we had million single entity characters that were running around on objectives.
Yeah.
Right now we cannot have that
No, you
because
can't, yeah.
mortars
Absolutely.
or dick cannons or something else.
Okay, well, I'm happy with it there. Any comments on that one specifically? And if not, any comments on any army that looks like it's out of place for us to review when we look at this final thing?
I think we can probably condense S and A tier.
Yeah.
Yes, are in GC that are better, but having them both be in their own tiers is excessive.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. Let's make it pretty again and delete that extra line.
I will still argue about Tauru being better than Gardarus, and these are the two armies that I'm playing the most. And yeah, I would always take the ignore cover and the easy access of multi-purpose units. For example, you're getting, let's say, stealth suits. They're shooting on their own and they're giving you a buff, which is nice. In Guard, you have to get specialized units that are not doing anything apart from giving orders, and with triple buffs on the no line of sight shooting and nerfs on the character rules. I do think that Guard are below Tau for sure. For example, if the character rule was the same as in 9th, where I can run around between the different units with a commander and give orders left and right, definitely I would prefer the flexibility of the Guard, but in this edition I would not, because just imagine how clunky it will be for a commander to give orders to units. It will be hard to use them.
I almost don't want to revisit this because they're next to each other right in the middle.
Yeah, I'm just saying from my
enough opinion to argue it, and you use both armies. Personally, I'd be fine with them. So.
Yeah, I mean, we outvoted you 3-1, but there you go. As a show of solidarity for you being the expert,
thank you.
We will swap the two around. The only one I can see that kind of bothers me is I think we underrated Custodes a little bit.
I could see that. I would definitely put them ahead of Death Guard, but I would also still don't rate the Death Guard ability.
Yeah, I almost feel like they're down a whole tier, to be honest. Because the other things are fairly garbo, but the Custodes feel slightly out of line.
Custodes are cool. Right? We've been asking the question about would you swap a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
And if you tell me as a Custodes player that I could have either my special dance moves or a significant amount of the time get +1 to wound, I would take +1 to wound, right?
Okay.
So, but I think the defensive side of it.
Yeah, the issue is the +1 to wound is on a notoriously slow army rather than an army like Custodians, which has speed, and that's partly why.
It's movement 5. Movement 6-5 army versus movement 5-4 army. Like the extra speed is.
The difference comes from the bikes.
I think
they've got some bike. I'm not saying Custodians aren't faster than Death Guard, but Death Guard is.
I feel like the key difference is that isn't always +1 to wound. So I would be inclined to swap these two around, despite the fact that actually it's weird, isn't it? Because the Death Guard one does work on their guns, and the guns do stuff.
Yeah.
No, that's probably right. That's probably right.
I would still say Custodians is better.
Like I think it's going to be a better army. I'm not sure in the vacuum their rule. Like the dance moves aren't very good. Like the -1 hit's great in some situations.
The other ones are very bland, aren't they? So.
It's like
Pavel, tie-break this basically. Death Guard and Custodes, they're not going to move away from each other because they're too close.
In vacuum, I'm thinking that Guard, because keep in mind that Custodes are hitting on 2s normally, and which means that sustained hits means
20%
only
increase.
20% increase, which is not amazing.
Yeah.
It don't benefit shooting at all, and it's flexible. You can say here is that and there is the other, which is a good thing, but minus toughness, it's enough to have one fast unit being a drone or a tank, maybe, if they are tough enough, or a rhino to go there and say, hey guys, you're a minus toughness, and suddenly some shooting starts doing things. Making some of your infantry to wound on fives instead of sixes against vehicles is amazing. Yeah, that
Okay.
in vacuum for sure. If you ask me which army is better,
Yeah.
for what we know at the moment, I would definitely say Custodes. But in vacuum, if we are looking only at their special rule, I'm going with that guard.
Anything else to fix before we call it a night?
No, I'm happy to call it there.
I'm happy to call it that. Obviously, we know that between G's, like tier S is the biggest gap between armies. But other than
Yeah,
that, I think the tier boundaries are quite good. So Dracaria definitely a chunk above Thousand Suns. Then we have a bunch of armies that could be shuffled to back and forth a bit. And then there's a big drop to just having +1 to hit or some tricks. Then a big drop to having limited +1 to hit or wound. And then a big drop to just having a rule you can't trigger reliably at all.
yeah. You have to rely your opponents to trigger it for you.
Yeah.
Just make again the disclaimer that we are discussing the things in vacuum.
Absolutely. So I'm just putting the army ride rule little diagram on the screen so it's visible at all times. So this is our collective tier list of army rules only. For game balance to be good, we expect the detachments and units in S tier and A tier to be worse than those in C tier and D tier. So when you open those data sheets, don't expect like equivalence in points, I suppose. So like a Chaos Knight, Chaos Armiger, War Dog should be cheaper than an Imperial Armiger, or better in some other way for there to be game balance realistically.
Yeah, I mean, the rule should be better.
There's a better detachment rule, right?
Yeah, or a better detachment rule, right? Except we already know the Imperial Knight detachment is quite good, so that'll be tough. Tough call.
Yeah, so basically they have the either better data sheets or better points or better enhancements.
So what we've seen from Workshop is that the detachments, other than G-Stir codes, actually their detachments kind of fine. They don't tend to correlate to this stuff, so they're not really compensating for it that well. So I suspect this will end up correlating not fully, but to a large degree to the actual tier list in the end. My
but
guess.
we all know that, for example, we're looking at the worst army ever. It's enough to have one broken data sheet and it can go up to S or A tier. For example, if the crisis are, let's say, 20 points cheaper than they should be, Tau needs to become S tier. Or if the storm surges are very good with the new towering crew, you can reg the game only with them. Without any special rules.
The various Chaos Demons attachments will come out that are mono gold, and like Zinch in the Shadow will make you not have armor saves across all your army or some crazy thing like that.
Yeah. So we have seen a lot of those things. For example, hey, now we're in the compensators meta, or hey, now we are in in Terminator meta. So everything can change.
We can live in the D-cannon meta.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that D-cannon meta. I have to.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool. Well, that is all I wanted to cover. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully we'll do this again. And send some links to your friends so they can hear your wise thoughts.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this once the indexes come out.
Absolutely. We'll get something in. I mean, it's my first wedding anniversary the weekend after the points come out, so maybe a week down the line. But
yeah, next time from Bulgaria we gave him an ultimatum to not go to weddings during the WTC.
Yeah, it's too on the trot for me. So it's just the curse of people getting married that weekend because it's August and it's nice.
Yeah, I got married that weekend. Yeah.
Oh, you fool!
Okay, guys.
That sort of thing. Yeah, but anyway.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Right.
Bye bye.